right. And then you turn. Good morning, everyone. Oh, it's lovely to see everyone on this beautiful autumnal day. Welcome to the Board of Directors that's held in public, and it's such a pleasure to welcome members of the public, hello, and our governors who are also joining us. Lovely to see you here in County Hall. And so far I've got apologies for absence from Gary O'Hare, Marie-Claire Delbrock, Lindsay Hoy and Anthony Deary. Do I have any other apologies? No other apologies. So just a few sort of formalities at the beginning of the meeting. The meeting is being live streamed, and that's in order to support transparency. Norfolk and Suffolk is a very big county, and we know that not everyone can get into Norfolk, especially me today when the trains aren't running. And it's really important that we live stream so that other members of the public can see what we're doing in public. As many of you know, it's not a public meeting, so it's our board meeting and we hold it in public. But we do have time at the end of the session today for anyone who's here who would like to ask questions, and I very much encourage that. And if we can restrict the questions to matters that are already on the agenda, that would be great. As ever, we've got a very full agenda. It's a number of important issues that we're going to be talking about as a board, and in fact all of the matters on the agenda are very important. But I would like to draw particular attention to the health equity strategy that we're being asked to consider and approve today. And there's priorities within that that are key to ensuring that we as a mental health trust can keep those who need our services well in the community, including prevention, population health, and delivering equitable services within neighbourhoods. And that sounds really fancy-dancy, doesn't it? But actually what it means that every single person living in Norfolk and Suffolk has got the right to the same access to services as everyone living elsewhere. And that's our aim and aspiration. And we're not there yet by any means, but that's where we need to get to. We're also going to receive some updates on the corporate services redesign, and of course our Learning from Death's quarterly report, which has been a standing item on our agenda for a really long time now, is vitally important. I'm delighted to see Talia here today, and also very pleased that we're going to hear an update from our service user and carer council, which I'm extremely interested in. You're very welcome, Talia, and lovely to see you. And of course, for me, and I think for my board colleagues, the most important part of today is when we will hear from one of our service users, and I'm delighted to welcome Julie to our board. And your experience informs everything we do, Julie, and we're looking forward to hearing from you both through your film and through your contributions. So if members of the board, and I speak to myself as well on this, can make sure that we take our reports as read, so that enables us to have maximum discussion, as is want for our board. There will be a short comfort break provided halfway through when we can stretch our legs and get a cup of coffee. And if I forget about the break, because often I do, Ade, could you please nudge me to make sure that happens? Let's move on now, shall we, to declarations of interest. On paper A, we've got the printed declarations. Has anyone got any further declarations to add for today's meeting? No. In that case, could we note that, and could we move on to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 31st of July, which is paper B? And first of all, can I ask those members of the board that were present at that meeting to say whether or not the minutes represent a true and accurate record? I see that they do, so could we please confirm the minutes as a board? Thank you very much. Let's take matters arising in the action log together. We've got paper C. It's interesting to note that on the action log, all matters are either completed or in progress, and all actions due for October have now been completed. There are a smattering of actions that are in progress but on track. But I'd like to check with board members if there's any comments that they have on those matters in progress. Helen.
Yeah, just in relation to the second one on the Mental Health Legislation Committee, it's marked as complete, but I think it's still in progress because we're working to the November meeting to have the new metrics finalised. So there's still work in progress, but progressing well.
Thanks very much indeed for Helen. If we could just correct that to work in progress, and hopefully by the time we meet at the next board, we may be able to mark that off as complete. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on those minutes? I do note that one of the issues we talked about at the last board meeting was the progress we're making in relation to ensuring that carer details are on the record. I'm really pleased to see that was picked up within committee, and that will be highlighted by our chair of that committee when the point comes in the agenda to give the board assurance. But I'll just check, Caroline, is there anything further you want to say in terms of that action that's been taken? I think it has been substantial action since the last board.
No, thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Okay, so with that in mind, are there any other comments or observations on the action log or any matters arising? No. In that case, let us note that, please. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to the service user experience. And as I say, I'm so pleased that Julie is here to share her experience. I know we've got Ash here too as well from the Recovery College. And I'm delighted that Kath Byford is going to introduce this item. Over to you, Kath.
Thank you so much, Zoe. So I'm really delighted to welcome Julie, who is a service user who has given us the gift of her story, her experience, which we'll hear on the video. So I think rather than stealing any thunder, I think if we start the video and then all will be clear. Thank you.
Julie found herself in a difficult place with her mental health a year ago. Following a visit to her GP, she was referred to the NSFT to be assessed by the ADHD service. Whilst waiting to hear from the trust about this assessment, she received a letter from the Recovery College.
And suddenly I got a letter from the Recovery College stating that whilst you're waiting for your referral, would you be interested in signing up because we can offer you lots of help while you're waiting? So that's when I first knew about it. I did ask my GP. They were absolutely unaware of your existence. And that's, I think we're going back, I think it was April, and I first started my sessions with the Recovery College then.
What are the Recovery College sessions like?
It was like I was in the right place because I was amongst other people of that had neurodivergent ADHD in our case, and for that, sessions lasted about 2.5 hours, and for that 2.5 hours I felt like I was with my people. I felt like I could be the true me without being judged, without being questioned, without being ridiculed. And I honestly have to say it was really liberating. And when I had my final session, because they stopped for a little while, or some that I couldn't make, it was quite upsetting actually, because I felt like now I'm back into the world where I don't feel I fit in. That was the place of my own little world. And it was great to be able to discuss feelings with other people that turn around and say, I know exactly what you mean, I have the same.
What have you taken from the sessions?
I've taken power in the fact that I've gained so much knowledge. And also one of the best things is I have made some firm friendships with a couple of others that attended the group, and we have formed quite a close friendship, and with ADHD in common, which is brilliant because the three of us can be our authentic selves without worry of how we might be perceived by somebody. And it's just so nice to be able to take from that we've still got our friendship outside of it, where if one of us is not having a good time, we can get in touch with the other and say, do you know what, this is what was happening to me today. I don't really know what to do, how to do it. And it's great because you can get input from other people that totally understand. So I think that's one of the best things that's come from it, to be honest.
What have you learned about yourself and ADHD?
The reason why I may get rather agitated, irritated, or the oversensory aspect, particularly, I've learned that is part of me. I can't change it, and I don't want to change it because I've accepted that is part of me. And I think that's the best thing of actually knowing. It's the unknown of wondering why I do this or why I feel this way. When you're actually told, well, this is the reason why, and I've only been informed of this because of obviously what I've learned from the recovery college. I wouldn't know otherwise. I honestly wouldn't know otherwise. I had no idea. You know, going to the recovery college, it's very evident with what I've learned, and that, you know, the things that I've learned is what I do. I've learned these are the things, you know, that's exactly how I suffer. That's exactly why I see things or I can't deal with certain things.
What is your experience of the recovery college tutors?
The tutors have been absolutely amazing. They're approachable, and the fact that, like in your case, you're also neurodivergent, you have an understanding of it, as opposed to somebody that may have learnt about it and then teaching a class. It's like with anything, you have an understanding of it. So the tutors that have taught the lessons that I've had have been absolutely amazing.
What is your final message?
There's lots of us like me, and we're out there suffering, not knowing what on earth is going on with us, to the point where some of us, like myself last year, are in a really desperate situation and we need help. And the fact that some of the GPs aren't aware of you, there just needs to be more awareness that you guys exist, because for me, you have been a lifeline, and if you've been a lifeline for me, you can be a lifeline for many other people.
Thank you very much, Julie, and it's a really moving account of what you've been through, and there's issues that it gives rise to, but it's also uplifting at the same time. So it must be incredibly hard to be able to bare your soul in the way that you have there, Julie, and talk to us about how life-changing this experience has been for you. So thank you very much. Kath, I'd like you just to introduce Kath and Rob, so that we know who they are as well. So could you just introduce them, and then I'm going to just for a little while, just ask for some reflections from the board, and then I'm going to see if Julie would like to say a little bit more. But first of all, I don't want questions, thank you, to Julie. I'd like reflections from what you've seen. But if you could introduce Ash and Rob, that would be lovely.
Absolutely, so thank you. So Ash is our Recovery College manager, and has been absolutely instrumental in working with the local Integrated Care Board partnership with regard to the development of this course. And Rob, you will have seen him on the video from behind at times, Rob. Yeah, your best angle. And Rob is one of the tutors that you work with, Julie, and I think it's really great to be able to have such a fabulous team. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kath. I'm going to, one at a time, throw it open to members of the board to think and reflect about what we've heard today from Julie. I'll go to Jason and then Caroline and then Jeremy, but I'm going to do it one at a time. So Jason first.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Julie, for taking the time to do the video. It's really appreciated. Observations, the couple of things you raised. One about awareness of services, and we need to think about how we make our services more aware or more readily available to all of the stakeholders within the health community. But also too, I've really picked up about the community and your sense of community from the Recovery College, and I wonder if that's something that we need to think about across some of our other services, and how we create communities of service users, and the benefits that could bring. So thank you.
I mean, Jason, one of the key issues here is that the service that Julie had access to is only commissioned by Suffolk and North East Essex Integrated Care Board, and it's due to come to an end in March. And Norfolk don't provide any of those services at all, and we've heard of the evident benefits. So I think there's a challenge for us as a board, and I'm not asking you as Chief Finance Officer to solve this. This is a board shared issue, but what more need we be doing to ensure that other people in Julie's position have access to those types of services? So may I bring Caroline in now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. 4 points I'd like to make. Of course, a really big thank you to Julie, and we can't underestimate really just your personal story and the impact that has, because it really, really demonstrates to all of us the effectiveness of this particular service. Second point for me is how important it is to have people in the Recovery College with a lived experience that are actually delivering the training and support, because you talked about that was even better for you, because you really could see that those, particularly Rob, but hopefully others, have an impact, understand the lived experience. Third point for me is around how we need to communicate the Recovery College more widely. And obviously this is particularly around a project around supporting people with neurodivergence, but we've got a wide Recovery College offer. And my fourth point is one that Zoe's already picked up. With Julie's support, I'd really like to send this video to the ICB and put it on the agenda of our next exec-to-exec meeting, and talk about the impact that this has. And it's great that the ICB have funded this in recognition of the fact that we have got people waiting a long time, and it's brilliant to hear that your experience has been really powerful in terms of that support. But I think the whole raising the profile, I think, would be really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Jeremy.
Thank you, Zoe. Yes, in addition to some of those points, which I won't repeat, I wanted also, as well as you, Julie, to thank you for sharing that. Also to pay tribute to you, Ash, and the team that you've created, and I hope you feel proud hearing that. Particularly what I heard was a really empathetic environment that is created for people. And I also noted that on the video, Julie, it had you listed as patient and carer, and I think that's a really important distinction that we shouldn't forget as well, and those responsibilities that you hold and the support for that too.
Thank you, well said, Jeremy. I'll go to Faisal and then Stuart.
Thank you. Julie, I was just going to make the point around the gap in awareness. So the video that you have all put together is really powerful. It's not just about funding. That's the sort of tool we need to get rid of that issue around awareness. It exists everywhere. It's not just about primary care. I mean, you're aware of it because of the care that you provide and your experience. We're aware of it because of the services that we provide. But actually in our schools, in other parts of our society, and I'm talking regionally and nationally, there's a huge gap in awareness. So with your permission, we can use that video to create more awareness. It's not just about funding, it is about awareness. So thank you.
Yeah, I think the video speaks for itself. I think the degree to which this has changed Julie's life is really evident from both the video and what we're seeing today. So thank you again for that. So I'd like to go to Stuart and then David.
Yeah, thanks, Zoe. And thanks, Julie, for spending the time to make that video. I think we will, as Caroline said, use that video. It'll be really helpful in the conversations we need to have with the ICBs as well. And, you know, just the help that you've had. The help that you've had through the Recovery College and, you know, being able to speak to peers and get that support is just invaluable. In this particular pathway, we've got some real issues, you know, countrywide. It's a big issue across the country. And I think the growth in Suffolk has gone. I think in 2020, the caseload was something like 635 patients, and I think we've got over 6,500 patients now on that caseload, which is just unbelievable. And everyone's struggling with it across the country about how we provide the support. And here's an example here where there is support available and it really works. So we've got to tap into that. I've took a clear message today that we've got to get the message out there to GPs that this service is there and available and can be tapped into. And then we do have to have conversations to replicate something similar for patients in Norfolk as well. So let's have those conversations. But thanks very much for this video because we'll use this. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much for saying that, Stuart. David.
Julie, very powerful, thank you. It really brings home to me the fact is that this is a common sense solution, actually. This is about mutual help. It's about lived experiences. It's actually, in one sense, a preventative service upstream. And I'm thinking, why the hell don't we do more of it? Why the hell don't other places do it? And so one of my questions really is to Caroline, is how extensive it is, because it just seems so obvious. And if you think about the government's mental health agenda and gender generally, it's about upstream. I mean, the fact that you've come today and you're on the video and you've told your story is incredibly powerful because through that lived experience. So I'm thinking, as professionals, as a board, what are we doing to really actually get us back to the question about what Stuart said, get the messages out there. This should be mainstream service provision.
Thank you for your passion, David. So, Julie, as you can see, you've also raised blood pressures around the room as well. But I think Caroline is going to answer that question.
So the concept of recovery colleges have been developed for over a decade across systems in England, which is really brilliant, and mental health trusts generally lead or work in partnership with voluntary sectors. So it's great that there's a long history, and there is in this trust, I guess, and it's brilliant that we're funding that, and we have a good resource, and we intend to keep that and support it. I guess this particular project, I think, is particularly innovative because it's about how can we support people while they're waiting. And what we've heard from Julie is it's done much more than just support while you're waiting. It's really enhanced that whole lived experience. So I think there's a lot of learning around this, and we could be thinking about this in terms of children, young people particularly, I think, and the long waits that we've got. So yeah, thank you.
It's that wait, because the waiting list once you are referred is so extensive and increasing, we are just left. And so it's that bridge in between that really, really helps, because I honestly, categorically say I really don't know whether I'll actually be here if I hadn't had the help from the Recovery College. It's that it's that the support from them is, like I say, it's been invaluable and literally life-saving in my case anyway.
Yeah, that's really important to say, Julie. Thank you for saying that here as well. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Don't feel obliged. Over to you.
I just want to add this to finish. Imagine your whole life, in my case 55 years, you felt different to others. You've been constantly told to calm down, stop overreacting, control your emotions, stop interrupting, don't let things get to you, stop overthinking, even been told you're mad. To grow up and continue through life feeling like you don't fit in or belong in the mainstream world. And aside from all that, the daily personal challenges faced due to being neurodivergent, it's an extremely lonely existence. And then after a lifetime of ridicule, segregation and even bullying, you find yourself in a place where you're amongst people who feel, react and behave in exactly the same way as you, where you feel accepted and feel valued, a place that gives you hope and strength, as well as an insight into neurodivergence. That, in essence, is what the Recovery College is, the only place I've fitted in.
Yeah, really well said, Julie, and we'll take a clip of that probably and sort of use that in order to make the progress that you want to see, and I think you've heard from the board directly that we want to see. Kath, I'm just going to do a very brief summing up if you don't mind. So, Julie, what you've heard today, and Ash and Rob, is a real commitment from the board to making sure that these services are available, that they're communicated, that people are aware of the services. Our next step is to make the argument to the people that fund us as a Specialist Mental Health Trust, which is our integrated care boards, to ensure that that funding can be sustained in the long term. You've done so many things today, but you've absolutely galvanised us as a group of people to make sure that that happens. So Julie, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Ash and Rob, for coming in. Kath, thank you very much indeed for introducing this. Thank you. And Julie, as I said, that's the best bit of the meeting done. So please do feel free to go. And thank you so much. Thank you. Great. Good. Lovely. It's great. Thank you, team. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Great. Well, as ever, it's incredibly hard to follow that, isn't it? So what better way to do it than with the chair's report? As I said, you've read my report, but I am going to make some important points of emphasis because this is my opportunity to talk both to the board but also to the 2.5 million people that are watching live as I speak. So as chair, I've said this before, I think it's really important to continue to state this. My three priorities for the next 12 months are making sure that we as a trust advance race equity across the trust, that we make strides in our commitment and promise to placing carers at the heart of our services and championing all of the innovation that we know other trusts and health providers are adopting that will ensure that we rapidly, really rapidly and at pace, improve the outcomes for our service users and carers. And many of those items are on the agenda today. But before I go into some of the detail, I'd like to begin by recognising the contribution of David White, who is going to step down as a non-executive director after our AGM. We all know, and we've seen this in action, haven't we, across the board, that David's brought great insight and wisdom to our board, drawing on his extensive experience, both as an executive in local government, but also as a seasoned NHS non-executive. David, you played a really key role in supporting the board through a really significant period of both challenge and change, and you've brought constructive challenge and support at the same time, you know, that high support, high challenge place that we all want to get into, which has really been vital in enabling us to define where we want to get to and move towards achieving our ambitions. So your really thoughtful leadership and your commitment to the Trust has been so appreciated by colleagues across the organisation and throughout the board. So David, thank you very much indeed. I'd like to mark the stepping down of Claire Murdoch today as well. Many of you will know that Claire is the NHS England's Director for Mental Health and has been for over a decade. She was also a keynote speaker at our leadership conference, and she addressed us in a way that enthralled the room and really showed her passion and commitment to achieving parity for mental health. And she's been such a strong advocate and voice there, speaking truth to power and making sure that mental health is not the forgotten service. I don't think mental health is yet treated with the same urgency as physical health. We'll see that when we come to talk about some of the priorities in the 10-year plan, and also, interestingly, the performance frameworks, which shows much greater interest in physical health, frankly, than mental health. But Claire developed and has protected the mental health investment standard. That sounds like something that's not very interesting, but it's vital to ensuring that we have the funds to be able to deliver our services, and she leaves a remarkable legacy, stronger mental health services, and an expectation amongst us, which I think is a truly legitimate expectation, that mental health should and deserves an equal footing. I'll say very briefly something about the Care Quality Commission, because I think Caroline might cover this in a little bit more detail, but we've had our 2 service inspections published, as you know. I would say that they're the best 2 reports that we've had in a decade. We received a good rating for our community services overall, and it requires improvement for our Crisis 111 services. In both reports, there's highlighting outstanding care that our staff have provided to our service users and carers, but we remain really humble that we still have a very long way to go. And of course, we're awaiting the results of our overall well-led inspection as well. But I'd just like to place on record our thanks as a board for the hard work that our staff have put in to achieve these really important improvements. As we know, we've got a number of members of the Council of Governors here today. It's lovely to see you, and I know many others are watching online, and I want to thank the governors in the active role that they're playing. In recent weeks, governors have participated in service visits, attended a development session which is really focused on developing the strategic priorities for our governors, and also in putting into the health equity strategy. A joint development session with our non-executive directors. I think we really shared our learning together, and we've worked out how we can make sure that together we're contributing in our different governance ways to driving improvement across NSFT. So thank you to you. I'd like to acknowledge the achievements of a number of members of staff. I think Caroline may go into this in a little more detail again, but we really have had a plethora of awards and nominations and finalists in the last 2 or 3 months. One in particular that I'll draw out is that we've been named Menopause Employer of the Year, which is an amazing achievement, and thank you so much to both Jodie Millard and Harper at Hockley for all the work that they've done there. And I had such a lovely evening with our 3 finalists at the National Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic Healthcare Awards in London, which was just a joy to be at. And whether we win awards or whether we're recognised, it really is a celebration of the changes that are happening in NSFT. We would not have seen that even a year or 18 months ago. So well done to our staff. We continue to engage with our members of Parliament in a whole range of ways, and in particular I'm really delighted that the locality visits that our MPs are attending, together with our triumvirates and our non-executive directors, are really providing MPs with an insight into the services that are being provided on their patch, and I'm getting great feedback from the MPs as to the kind of the value and relevance of those visits. So again, I'd like to really record my thanks to everyone that's been on those visits and to the feedback that I've received from those MPs. And of course, Caroline and I have regular one-to-ones with them as well, and we're inviting all of our MPs to meet with us, aren't we, in Westminster. I think the 10th of December is the date that's set aside for that. So again, really important that we do that. We continue to make sure that the sort of the kind of the route between ward to board is more evident, and our board to team visits in our locality directorates are working really well. Caroline and I are visiting all of our localities and their corporate teams. And our next scheduled, I think, outing is to Central Norfolk, Caroline, on the 6th of October, but it really does bring that sort of insight and give staff in that locality. It's not simply the kind of the senior leaders that we meet with staff from across the whole of the locality and receive feedback, ideas, and also inspiration, which is fantastic. Under the category of putting carers at the heart of everything we do, and slightly squeezing this into a sort of slightly artificial heading, I am going to give us a really big plug for our AGM, that's our annual general meeting, an annual members meeting, which is taking place on Thursday the 9th of October, so that's a week today, and it's at the Forum, which is Millennium Plain, Norwich. We've got an amazing showcase of NSFT staff and initiatives, things like the Recovery College, I think, are going to be there, and all of the different services that we provide are going to be on show in the marketplace from 10:30 onwards. So there'll be stalls and there'll be interactive and engaging displays, and then you've got the delight of the AGM itself, which I have to confess is a slightly formal thing, but still very interesting, isn't it, Rebecca? It is. Where you'll hear from myself, Caroline, and of course our lead governor, Melinda Bird. But the highlight of that day will undoubtedly be the official launch of our NSFT Carers Charter, which sets out how we're going to better work and support carers, and which is the culmination of a very long piece of work which has been co-produced. And I'm really looking forward to see that. So it is a landmark moment for us. I hope as many of you, obviously the board, I think there's an expectation three-line width that they will be there, but I would invite as many members of the public, service users, carers and our governors to come in and enjoy a celebratory day, but a day where we kind of refocus and talk about where we go next as a trust. So thank you very much indeed. Happy to take questions. I don't see any. Thank you very much indeed. Let's move on to the Chief Executive's report with a noting of my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, I'm really pleased that a few things that I wanted to bring attention to, but I won't duplicate things that you've talked about as well. There's so much going on, I think, across the Trust that we're progressing with, which is really great to see. First thing I wanted to just do was to welcome Tom Davis, who's our new Chief Delivery Officer, and I think this is your first board meeting, Tom, so it's brilliant to have you with us, and you already feel like an embedded part of the team. I wanted to just mention, in duplication of Zoe, but I think important for me to just also mention Claire Murdoch and the amazing leadership that she has given to the mental health sector. It's through her leadership that we've seen such significant increase in funding in the last 5 years into mental health services. It is worrying, I would concur with Zoe, around the parity of mental health funding and focus going forward. It's incumbent on us all to really do everything we can to keep that as a high priority. I would say that I think we're fortunate with our ICB colleagues that I completely believe that they have mental health as a high priority. We've just met with them in the last week, and I think have got exciting opportunities together ahead. But Claire certainly has done an amazing amount for service users, carers, and for the sector over the last nearly a decade that she's been in role. Of course, she will continue to be Chief Exec of of the largest mental health trust in England. So she's not going out of, her voice will still be heard, I'm quite sure. The next thing I just wanted to, and again, a bit of a legacy of Claire, is the work that we're doing across the east of England. So we're really strengthening the alliance we have with the other 3 mental health trusts across the east of England, which is really important that we share good practice and collaborate together. We have historically, as part of the national programme, been working together around some of our more specialist services, perinatal services, for example, our eating disorder services, our forensic services, but we haven't collaborated enough around the generic, the real line share of our services. So we've just, in the last couple of weeks, launched a new alliance where we're going to be collaborating across all of our services. And I see that as a really positive progress. And we're also in the process of setting up professional region-wide groups as well. So again, really helping us all to learn and improve from each other at scale. The next thing I wanted to bring attention to is the really important World Suicide Day that we marked on the 10th of September. We'll be hearing later on from Kath in the agenda around our real priority around health equity, and suicide prevention is a key priority of that strategy. Clearly, we need to be working hand in glove with partners to have the biggest impact on reducing suicides. And it was really great to see so many of our staff involved. Stuart and Gary went along to a Night of Hope, which was hosted by Norfolk and Waveney Mind, and 5 of our trust colleagues were asked to be baton bearers in the Baton of Hope, which is obviously a national suicide prevention initiative. So a big thank you to all those people. As Zoe said, we have, since we last met, had our CQC, Care Quality Commission reports around our adult community services and our crisis services. And as Zoe says, and I have, me being me, have gone back and looked at every single report since the inception of when we had CQC. So we've had 8 different visits from the CQC since 2015. And they are by a long shot the most positive we've had. And that's a real tribute to our staff, but service users and carers who've worked in partnership and our partners. Now clearly they also point to areas that, as we would say very openly, that we've still got a lot more work to do. But it's encouraging and it's great for staff to be recognised for the amount of work that they've done. So a really, really big thank you to everybody that's resulted in that pleasing outcome. I just wanted to say that a big part of our improvement is our focus on our culture. And again, we've been historically challenged in terms of having a really patient and staff-centred culture. And a mark of the improvements in our culture is that staff want to start to stay here and that we can recruit staff. And it's great to see that our vacancy rates for our nursing are reducing significantly. We've just taken on 43 new student nurses that have come off the university courses, and we offer them in their 3rd year a guaranteed, subject to them completing their training place, so really important that they're choosing to come here. We've recruited 12 new consultants. We've recruited 7 new clinical psychologists, or consultant psychologists, psychiatrists I should say, as well as psychologists. So a really, really important mark of us improving as an organisation, that we're reducing our turnover and people are applying to come and want to stay here. So that's really important. And the final thing I wanted to celebrate, so he's talked quite a lot about some of the awards, which I completely concur, is that recently we introduced a new Talk award winners. So Talk is our new values, not that new now, and they're starting to be embedded, which is really important. And every month we ask each of our 5 localities and our corporate services to have a nominations process, and we have hundreds of staff that are put forward, which is really, really important. And so we celebrate, and I just wanted to call out the people this month that have been recognised. So we've got Najam Akhtar, who's a specialist grade psychiatrist working in Great Yarmouth and Waveney. We've got Lisa Payne, who's a clinical nurse specialist, who works in our first response service from West Suffolk. We've got Nesta Owens, who is a management support team administrator from Central Norfolk. Claire Poulson, who's a property manager from our corporate services award, and Rosie Bent, who is an assistant psychologist from Samphire Ward over in West Norfolk. So as you can see, there's a real diversity of the people that we're celebrating in terms of them living our values. And our overall winner for the Trust is Rachel Shipley, who is a clinical team leader working in East Suffolk locality. So really, really important, and a massive, massive thank you to all of them. That's me. I'm very happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks very much, Caroline. We've got Julian and then Helen.
Caroline, thank you. There's a lot of detail in that report, so appreciate it. I'm really encouraged by the recruitment activities that you've outlined and so on, but having so many people join us over quite a short period of time, are we being as tight as we can be about the induction processes and the follow-up processes as people settle in, so that we are really sure that people are happy working for us and that their concerns are being picked up?
Yeah, really, really important point, isn't it? And I know that we've done a lot of work around our induction, and we have that, I mean, certainly for the People Committee to make sure they get assurance of feedback from the induction process. But we've also set up a scheme where people within the first 6 months of landing with us meet with the executive to talk about their experiences. I don't know, Jeremy, if there's anything else you want to come in and say around that.
Yes, absolutely. So during months 3 to 6, we hold a webinar with staff who have joined, to remind them of the support that's available to them, the ways to escalate concerns. It's led by an exec. There are members of my team present to support around the edges and to intervene if there's anything that we can do to respond to concerns that are raised. I've done 2 of those already in my time here, and I've been really impressed, actually. It's something that I've not seen elsewhere, so it is innovative.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline and Jeremy. Helen?
Thanks, Caroline. There's such a lot of positive news in your report. I really welcomed what you were saying about collaboration across all the mental health trusts, because I think one of the things that the NHS generally hasn't been great at over the years is learning and improving at scale. We do a lot of that, not invented here, and we have to reinvent. So that was really, really positive. It may be too soon to say much more, but I was really encouraged to see that Suffolk and North East Essex is going to be one of the national neighbourhood implementation pilots, and that sounded as if that had a lot to offer us as we develop kind of our own neighbourhood approaches.
So really important, and it's great, isn't it, that actually SNE ICB, which we know is the most highly performing ICB in the country, has been successful in all 3 of its localities as a neighbourhood hub. And at the heart of our health equity strategy that Kath will be talking about later, and obviously moving into localities, is both locality and neighbourhood working. So we want to be really proactive around how we can work alongside neighbourhood hubs. However, at the same time, we've just recently, as we meet both across the east of England, but we also have a Chief Execs Collaborative across all of Midlands and east of England. And because we've got more scale, we're able to influence more nationally. So we've just had Jim Mackey's team, who've just been to meet with us in the last month. And we've presented to them how actually neighbourhood hubs should be looked at through the lens of mental health, as well as more broadly, because there's such a focus on hospitals. And of course the partners, that if you're looking at mental health hubs, would be different. So obviously voluntary sector are key. The police are completely essential, for example, as well as social care. And so Glenn Burley, who came along, has actually been encouraged and has asked us now to progress the development more of a mental health neighbourhood hub, which is the basis of, there's 4 pilots, again, some of the legacy of Claire Murdoch, 4 pilots across the country, and we've again been in touch with the neighbourhood, with the national team. So I think there's both models, and we want to work alongside and look to develop both, and in terms of our future transformation plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. I think it's really important. I think it would be helpful for us to keep on the front foot on this, as Caroline's indicated, and maybe we can have a broader discussion maybe at one of our development sessions about what this looks like and what we can do as both non-executive directors and the board to influence that sort of pace of change happening more rapidly. So, Caroline, thanks for an excellent report. Don't see any more questions. So, could I ask the team to note Caroline's, the Chief Executive's report? Thank you. Let's move on now to the Trust Strategy and Large Scale Change Programme. I'm going to hand over to Tom.
Thanks, Zoe. So this is our standing item to provide an update on strategy, and we deliver strategy through our Large Scale Change Programme. As set out in the paper, I think the key update to make is that we have just completed a mid-year review of the programme, and I'd just like to talk through a couple of the changes to give a bit more detail about a couple of material changes. There are a couple further changes listed in the paper, but they're more presentational. So most materially, we've created 2 new programmes. The first one is called Kind and Compassionate Workplaces. It's to be led by Jeremy, our new-ish Chief People Officer. And that's really set out to address concerns raised by the staff survey, to really create an open, supportive, just culture. We already had some work focused in this area, focused on inclusion and being open and transparent with staff, but this really builds and really strengthens that work. By bringing inclusion into this programme, we had a programme on inclusion previously that now we're going to strengthen through this programme. But it means that part of that inclusion work was our focus on race equity. Now, as Zoe said at the start, this is one of her key priorities and key priorities for the Trust. So we will be delivering a race equity programme, which will be both delivery of our race equity plan, which we've co-developed over the past number of months and agreed recently, as well as our PCREF plan. Now, PCREF is the Patient and Carer Race Equity Framework. This is a national mandate for all mental health trusts, and we've got a clear PCREF plan that was signed off at board in April. And this programme will deliver those 2 key elements, and Jeremy and Kath together will deliver on that. We've also developed a new Partnerships and Neighbourhood Working programme, which will be led by Faisal, our Chief Medical Officer and Joint Deputy Chief Exec. We had some activities again in train already in terms of partnership development, particularly focused on primary care, which I think really links to that first item, to really strengthen our relationships with primary care and improve their understanding of the services we provide. But we want to broaden that much more fully. So this is a key area for the Trust. As we look to deliver on the 10-year plan, system working, partnership working is increasingly important, and obviously there's a lot of change both in the local system and nationally that we need to respond to through greater partnership working. Helen's last question reflects that through the neighbourhood working models that are promoted in the 10-year plan. So that's another new programme. This programme replaces clinical standards. So the clinical standards programme was really focused on developing our IQPR and making sure we have better measurement and understanding of metrics. Those discrete deliverables have been completed, and now we move into business as usual as we look to strengthen our performance reporting on an ongoing basis and our performance. So they're the material changes to the scope of the programme through the mid-year review. In terms of delivery, just quickly, we're broadly on track to deliver programmes this year. You can see a highlight report in the pack. I think I need to call out the key risk. We're obviously delivering a corporate redesign programme. It's one of our large-scale change programmes. It's a huge piece for our corporate colleagues. This is an intensive programme that's going to continue for a couple of months, and I'll provide an update later on. But that does provide a risk to delivery of our other pieces of work as we try and balance efforts. The one programme that you'll see has a red rating is our EVI programme, which Jason will give an update on later. It's red rated here because we've set ourselves an internal stretch target. So beyond the target that we've set nationally and agreed nationally, we're working to a stretch target to deliver 100% of our savings recurrently, and Jason will provide an update in a minute.
It's very clear, Tom. Thank you very much indeed. When you see our large-scale change programme all in one place and the changes that we've introduced as it's been refined through the period of time, it's such a salutary reminder, isn't it, of all of the activity that's going on to drive this trust to excellence. So thank you for that. I see a question from Julian and Paul.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to see the range of what we're doing around these various programmes. I guess my concern, particularly with the backdrop of the corporate services redesign, is just how we hold the commitment of our staff to all these programmes. And I wondered how we are managing to flavour this with some of the impacts of the programmes, that we're not so obsessed with the programmes themselves, that we're actually starting to see some real impacts of those, and getting people excited about the potential for what we can do through these programmes. It'd be nice to have it at board sometime in the future, but particularly for our staff, I hope we'll be doing a lot of that.
Yes, I think that is a challenge with us doing so much. You know, we're covering a lot of ground across these 12 programmes, and that's definitely been one of the risks. And one of our areas of focus is better communication this year with staff. I think the other thing that's really important is that we are, as part of our IQPR work, we'll be directly linking those metrics into our IQPR that are linked from delivery of the corporate redesign programme, of the large-scale change programmes. So we'll be able to see, and staff will be able to see, the positive impact, hopefully, that those programmes are having on performance. So we're trying to make sure we link delivery of these programmes to direct performance improvements through our IQPR.
I mean, it's a good challenge, isn't it? It's if we go and talk to our locality directorates and then staff beyond that, are they going to be able to articulate what the large-scale change programmes mean, how they relate to them, and how it's going to make their ability to do their job well better? I think that communication point that you're making, Tom, is really important. So we'll keep I think a fairly sharp eye on that. I'm going to Paul and then Helen.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom, for sharing this. I think I really welcome the clarity about the three new large-scale change programmes. I think kind and compassionate workplaces and race equity really then enables us to really track how we're doing against those, and it sets out a very clear intent. I think my question is more about. I noticed that one of our large-scale change programmes has now gone into business as usual. And I think my question is, well, that's great, but how are we how does that happen? How do we transition from programme into business as usual? Because one of those challenges, obviously, as soon as you take the spotlight off something, things don't get the focus they require. So how are we managing that into business as usual, and what are the lessons for other programmes as we go forward, really?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that transition into business as usual is really important, that we make that transition. We're working on across so many bases at the moment, and I think as we improve further as a trust, we want to try and limit the areas of further work. It is really intensive for staff. In terms of that programme in particular, that was really set out to address the deficit we had in terms of our performance reporting of data in particular. So having a really firm handle on the data we've got. So I think through the IQPR that we'll talk about later, you can see a much stronger piece of work. There is still incremental improvement that I'm sure Stuart will talk to. But I think as a programme, that meant that we had the tangible outputs. Now those key metrics that we focused on sit in our IQPR. So I think we're confident that that is tracked through business as usual performance management. I think your question is probably more pertinent to other programmes where it's not quite as clear how that transition happens. So I think that's a really fair question when we get to the point for other programmes with slightly less metric-related, KPI-related outputs.
Thanks, Tom. Faisal, I'm looking curious because I think I have Helen next?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Sorry, just one comment and
Sorry,
one question. The comment was just following on, Tom, from your point about that communication about the performance improvement, which I think is really, really important to do that. But I was also just reflecting on the power of personal stories in doing that, and for staff probably a quick kind of video that tells a personal story from a staff member's or a service user's point of view can just speak volumes, and so that was a comment. My question was just picking up on the clinical transformation programme. It notes on the heat map that most are on track, but some key concerns, and makes a comment about developing positive relationships with primary care colleagues in Suffolk. Just wondered how we were setting about that.
Thanks, Stuart.
I mean, Faisal will come in on this. I don't know if you want to start, Faisal, and I'll chip in. But, I mean, the one thing I would say is we'll get that with a mic. Apologies. Yeah, so we have had a bit of a challenge in Suffolk with GPs, and the relationship's been slightly challenged, I would say. There's been a number of issues, particularly with an issue we had with link workers that were working in the GP arena, and we ceased that contract with the ICB. Well, the ICB ceased the contract, actually. And that's created a little bit of a tension. We are meeting with the GPs to almost have a new conversation about how we can work well together and how we can bring them in. They're so key to the clinical transformation work that we've got to do as an organisation. So we're really keen to sit down with them and understand what the issues and problems are and how we can work better together and how we can start to use and get their support to develop the pathways that we need to develop across Suffolk as well. So with that meeting, me and Gary and Faisal are meeting, I think it's 2 weeks' time with the 2 lead GPs for Suffolk.
That's really helpful. And where would that get? Which of our board committees will that progress on that be picked up on? Is that in the quality committee?
Quality.
Okay. Could we just ask that's kind of noted and progress and assurance in that regard feeds through into quality committee? Thank you, Faisal.
Thank you. And just on that point, Helen, in relation to primary care, the maturity and the improvement in our relationships at all levels is now apparent. So you're talking here about the involvement of primary care in our transformation programs. That is definitely happening. We've also got a primary care partnership forum that is about 6 months old now, and it is in a completely different space to where we were 6 months ago. It's right to have difficult, challenging conversations in that forum, and it's the offshoot of that forum that led to, well, how do we link in primary care to our transformation programme, and also the conversations that we're having at system level, for example, around neighbourhood. How do we bring primary care into those system level conversations? Happy to provide more detail.
And do you have a question, Faisal?
I was just going to make a very, very small point about business as usual and how programmes move. We also have now a very well-functioning business delivery group that runs regularly, it's chaired by the Chief Operating Officer. So those performance metrics are also tracked in the business delivery group. And I know that you see it in the IQPR, but it also lives through the business delivery group.
We just need to watch abbreviations, folks, sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Yes, thank you. I think it gives rise to a broader question, Tom. Let's just think about how we deal with this. But the board itself receiving assurance around the kind of the business as usual, and the point made over here that once it's no longer right in front of us, that we have that assurance that we're not doing what we've had a habit of doing in the past, is sort of fix and forgetting. And I'm not sure how we do that, Caroline. Let's take that offline and think about how we can just kind of maybe demonstrate that through your regular updates.
If I can just come in and just give a bit of an example. So obviously when we started off with our large-scale change programmes and our strategy, learning from deaths was a really high priority for us. Yeah. We've done significant work, but the board are monitoring that on a by every 4 months we get a paper to the board that gives assurance around that. Clinical standards, we wanted to get obviously a really clear performance framework set up, And, you know, it's not that long ago that we didn't even have a central performance team. So we've invested significantly around that, and the clinical standards won't be going away. They'll now be mapped across all the relevant 12 major change programmes rather than being a standalone. The other change is around inclusion. Whilst we'll be tracking through the People Committee all areas of inclusion, and we'll still continue having our Inclusion Council, we know that our really high priority that we need to focus more on is race and race equity. So there's just 3 examples of the changes that we're proposing to happen.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you, Caroline. Tom, thank you for a very clear presentation. Don't see any more questions, so can we please note the changes, note the progress of delivering the 2025-26 programme. Can we have the board's agreement to that? Thanks very much. We're going to take a 10-minute break now, 36. If you can come back at 1:45, that's 9 minutes, that would be great. Thanks very much. Thanks. Come on to the agenda item where, based on our integrated quality and performance report, we have an important board discussion on assurance that those areas where we want to see greatest progress is indeed happening. And I'm really pleased to ask Stuart to lead us through this conversation. And as ever, we will be bringing the chairs of board when it operates in committee to contribute to the assurance by advising us the issues that they've dealt with in their committee and that they're assured on, and to talk to the board for further solutions where there is still areas that we call escalating up to board. So Stuart, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll start by, obviously I will take the papers as read, but I will highlight a number of issues and just talk you through some of the developments that are happening within the IQPR, the Integrated Quality Performance Report. You'll notice by the pack that we've now included value, and we're using improving value. We're using the AAA methodology that we use throughout the report, which is where we where we talk about a particular metric in terms of is it an alert, is it advisor, or is it assure. We've also excluded from the summary this month, we've excluded from the summary document the improvement value section, but from next month that will be in the report. And then just some developments that we're currently working on within the IQPR area is just trying to develop a front sheet, a balanced scorecard sheet that will allow us to see at a glance exactly what's happening across the organisation with all the key metrics aligned. It'll also align with our 12 large-scale change programmes, and we're also trying to understand how we can incorporate where particular metrics align to the BAF as well. So we're doing some work to align to that now, and hopefully in the next couple of months we'll be able to show that in the report. I'm going to move on to improving health, and the first thing I would say is just hearing the message from Julie today and the excellent reminder of the transformation and wonderful effects that our services have, and the need to keep finding ways to improve and expand what we do for our patients. The first metric I just want to talk about is the waiting list size over 18 weeks for neurodevelopmental weights. I think there's over 12,000 patients currently on that waiting list, and I'm going to bring Andy in, but I just want to repeat, in January 2020, in Suffolk, for example, 337 patients, I think I said earlier, and by September 25 we were sitting at 6,703 patients on that caseload. We reckon it'll be up to 7,000 by January for that particular caseload for neurodevelopmental weights. But there's lots of work going on there. There's a national task force being set up to look at that problem, and we have a Norfolk and Suffolk task force that's also set up working with both ICBs and partner organisations to see how we can improve that. But Andy's going to come in and just talk about some of the other work that's going on in that particular area. I'll hand over to you, Andy. Thanks.
Thanks, Stuart. I think really important you mentioned Norfolk and Suffolk task force that we've got going on. Really important to think about where the work in that is going to. So in the longer term, we know that already, and off the back of what Julie spoke about this morning, I think really encouragingly, one of the very first recommendations coming out of that group is around extending the services of the Recovery College to Norfolk so that everyone can receive that same support. So really good initial signs coming out of that working group. In the longer term, we're now looking at shifting towards a need-led service that prioritises speed, how quickly people are seen based on the complexity of their condition, creating dual diagnosis pathway between autistic spectrum disorder and ADHD, because there's a 70% comorbidity, so trying to create that dual pathway. Looking at a hub and spoke model, creating a specialist hub that's able to support the complex cases, upskilling other parts of the system to pick up cases where it's not as complex. And further expanding the digital tools. In the now, we're making sure that we're revising, clarifying referral processes with GPs to make sure that really appropriate referrals coming through, piloting an AI tool where consultations are transcribed to create capacity within clinicians and release resource. And by December, we hope to have contacted everybody on waiting lists to make sure we understand their position in terms of are they still waiting or have they seen or sought private input already, because sometimes we get to somebody on the waiting list and we find out that they've accessed support already. And working with an external provider to support some of our lower complexity patients at the moment. Back to Stuart.
Thanks, Andy. I'll move on to the next area, which is an alert on out of areas. It's the usual one that we've talked about in a number of boards now. But I do think it's key to talk about. There's lots of work going on to try and support our out of area position. And we've had a number of pieces of work, including a full bed census on how we use our beds and what patients are accessing our beds and how long for, and what the discharge pathway looks like for those particular patients, and also what it needs to look like. And then we've also held a MAID event, which is a multi-agency discharge event with the system as well, to look at how we could look at expediting discharge across our pathways as well. And that has really made an impact. We've also reinforced gatekeeping, and we've stopped psychiatric liaison teams being able to directly admit onto wards without the crisis team seeing the patient face to face, and every person who is requested for a bed has to be seen now face to face by the crisis team, which makes that a lot more robust. And the expectation on the crisis team is that there's a full purpose of our admission, so we know exactly why we're admitting that patient to a bed, and the ward team who accept the patient, they know exactly what they need to do with that patient, because that wasn't as robust as it needed to be. And we've seen the report shows 26 out of area placements in July. Today we're on 15, so we've made some real inroads in that, and we continue to push towards a trajectory to have no patients out of area at all. Sorry, Caroline.
Sorry, just to come in to say, I mean, that's really great that we've done that work, and we're today at 15, but if we just remind everybody that the new ward that we're planning to open in the new year is going to be 15 beds, that would, if we had those today, we'd be at 0 out of area placements.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Good reminder. Okay.
Sorry, since there's been one interruption, I'll do another one. Is this out of area or out of trust?
Out of trust.
Right.
And that
We've got nobody out of area.
Can we be really precise on our language? I know NHSE wants out of area language, but I think it's important for us. We're talking about people who are still being cared for in Norfolk and Suffolk, but not by NSFT. Am I right on that? Please. Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks, Zoe. I'll move on to psychiatric liaison team, urgent referral team within 1 hour. And I'm going to hand over to Andy, who's got a bit of feedback on the work that's been going on in this particular area as well.
Thanks, yeah. I think in terms of the psychiatric liaison, we've talked about it before. Lots of the pressure in the system there is around number of people turning up at the same time in the hospital environment, and importantly we're learning as well about the number of people who aren't medically fit for assessment when they're referred, and that impacts on our performance. We've made some changes though to make sure that we've got more resource on the ground in terms of releasing staff who were overseeing the joint response car. We're now asking our crisis pathway to take a leadership review over the joint response car, which gives time back into the liaison staff on the ground to increase their opportunity to assess, and we're looking at their productivity as we are with the rest of the organisation to make sure that we're maximising what the staff can deliver. We do think though that one of the things we need to keep an eye on is the scale of work in Norfolk, particularly where the NNN has grown at pace, and the liaison service within our portfolio hasn't. So we're well overdue really some conversations with ICBs around how we can maybe grow the liaison service in Norfolk. In Suffolk, I think it's worth pointing out that we noticed that there was a deterioration in performance in the IQPR pack. I've checked in with the services. They had a recovery plan in place, and they're expecting that to be back on track for this month against the standards. And the final thing I'll say on that, and this probably goes across all of the areas actually in the crisis pathways, for Norfolk particularly, Suffolk already has this. We're standing back up an urgent emergency care forum, which takes place on the 4th of November this year, which I'll chair, and is with County Council, ambulance, fire, acute trusts as well, which will be a good space to have some of these conversations in.
Thanks, Andy. And then the last one I just want to talk about is the very urgent crisis referrals seen within 4 hours. Well, we've got a particular outlier with for July for Central Norfolk, which was 32% against the 95% target. It is now sitting at 58%, and Andy's going to just talk through the work that's going on in that particular area as well.
Thanks, Stuart. So we've talked about this at the Performance Finance Committee as well. Effectively, we've asked our Central Norfolk services, where we've got the biggest challenge, to deep dive into some of the processes. What was discovered really is that the triage of patients coming through the 111 mental health line, all of those were being pushed towards our crisis team for a 4-hour very urgent response. Not all needed that level of response. Some of them could very adequately and appropriately and safely be managed by partner agencies through signposting or through our community teams. The leadership team in Central have now put in a process which means that we carry out more enhanced senior clinical triage in that 111 space, which means only the very urgent cases go through to the crisis team, which is where we're seeing the improvement. I think it's good that we're now seeing at 58%, but I would hope and expect that we would be pushing that out so that the Central team comes in line with the rest of the trust, really, because it's been an outlier for some time.
Thanks, Andy. And then
I'm just conscious in these updates, and very conscious that a number of these issues have been really reviewed in depth in our board committees, but are there any issues as a board that we need to be hearing, not just the what, but also the so what and the what next? I think we get the so what, but you know, should we be having more of a discussion around the what next, or is what you're saying actually we've got this, it's been through board committee, we're going to wait to see whether the remedial action that we're taking is going to take effect? But I just want us to be able to track this conversation through as a board in a sort of sensible way.
Yeah, so I'll use the example of Central Norfolk, Zoe. I think there's an issue generally in terms of performance across Central Norfolk. I think it's been raised a number of times, and it's come through in a number of performance reports. And we're looking at that in real detail, and we're looking at each individual metric with the Central Norfolk locality, not to say how we can improve that. And that's coming to Performance and Finance Committee in November as a deep dive to really talk it through. So we've agreed that that's going to come through, and we'll bring that back to the next board.
Caroline. Thank you.
I think what we're seeing is a maturing picture. I don't think we've yet got to, across all areas, the what next and total assurance. Because what we need to be saying is if performance is off track, what actions are we taking and when are it going to be back on track? What we're hearing is what actions we're taking, and we're still maturing to be able to say and when's it going to be back on track across all performance areas. Now we've got plans around that. First of all, we're reviewing every single performance metric, and we're working with commissioners around, do we really need all these performance metrics? Can we reduce them down and really focus on the most important for patients? And then we're working with our newish localities, still fairly new, we have to keep reminding ourselves they're only 9 months in, to give them the skills to be able to do real demand and capacity planning with the performance team, which again is maturing. And then we're prioritising which metrics, because we can't do all of them at once, to get credible trajectories for improvement. And that's really our plan going forward. And then what I'd really want our committees and the board to focus on is where those trajectories for improvement are not on track. And then what do we need to do differently? So I think an acceptance that we're maturing, but we're not where we want to be in terms of being able to give assurance to all of us for Central, for example, when is it going to be at the rate of seeing patients in 4 hours that are the 4 localities are, which is over 80% of patients. I still think we can push ourselves through Stuart and through Gary and Andy to say, let's really focus, and that's what you are doing at the moment, on which are the priorities. So we particularly want to focus, obviously, on the national priorities as well, of which 4 hours, seeing people in 4 hours in a crisis, which is so important for patients, is so that's absolutely one of our high priorities. And I'm hoping we'll see more of that. I don't know, Stuart, will we see the first stronger trajectory coming through next board in some of the metrics?
November, but build on again in December as well, so you'll start to see even more coming through.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, that was really helpful. We are continuing. So this is a maturing picture, as we know, and the IQPR and the kind of the narrative on the IQPR is vastly improved to where we were even 6 months ago. There is going to be an exercise of prioritisation of the priorities, because everything can't be a priority, and that's going to take place through executive feeding into board committees. Is that correct? Yes. And against our priority metrics, which are the ones that really tell us we're providing a great service, there's going to be trajectories. So where we are now and where we want to be and by when. Is that correct? And all of that in a package will be coming to board, or only when there needs to be an what's it called? It's called an escalation, not an escalation, whatever that is. An escalation where we're off trajectory. Is that correct?
Just right. To be absolutely clear, really, really helpful, and that is. But what we won't be doing by the next board is be able to bring in all the trajectories for all of the metrics.
Got it.
So there's a maturing picture, and obviously we're going through all the corporate redesign process as well, which is affecting the performance team. But what Stuart and the performance team will be doing is say, by month, how many of these revised metrics can we get clear trajectories for? I mean, I'd like to think we can get the lion's share done by the end of the financial year, but I'm always pushing. So I've got to be realistic as well. And I guess what we then need to see is focus, are we on plan? If we are, we don't have to worry. Yeah. If we're not on plan, what new actions do we need to take? Yeah. Either at committee and then potentially at board if that needs escalating up.
Everyone happy with that? Sounds like everyone in the room gets that apart from me, but I'm happy to know that. Who wants to come in? David and then Roger.
Just on the performance comments today, is that okay? There's a couple of points.
Is it on this point?
No, it's on 2 specific points.
Is yours on this point, Roger, on the trajectories?
It's a very general point.
All right, let's just hold the general points until Stuart's finished, and then can you invite those comments in, Stuart?
I'll tell you what I'll do, Chair. I'll bring in Julian to bring in the Chair's report from the Performance and Finance Committee, and then we'll pause for questions around improving care.
Okay, all right. Improving health.
Improving health. Sorry.
Okay, Julian, thank you.
Thank you. 2 particular ones I wanted to highlight from Performance and Finance Committee. We did have a very in-depth review of the IQPR report, Integrated Performance and Finance Report. And I think the improvements Stuart's made to the narrative was really welcomed by the committee. The difficulty with it is it makes us ask more questions. So we're kind of, doing a little bit of shooting ourselves in the foot, but it's good because it's giving us all a better understanding of what's happening, really. There are big concern, really, in terms of the finances, is around the payment of deficit support funding. It's not quite so much money these days, but we are still very dependent on it in this transition period. And because it is now dependent on the financial performance of the whole system, including the acute hospitals, which are under a lot of financial pressure, we are concerned about whether we are going to receive that through the year. So that is a big alert issue. In terms of the advise issues on our report, we talked quite a bit about neurodiversity assessments, and after Julie's very appropriate presentation earlier, There's some really good news coming through there. There is some one-off funding that is for Suffolk to catch up and reduce the longest waits from 4 years to 2 years. I wish we could have that in Norfolk too. But also the whole area of online diagnosis. There's some new accredited software for QB which is starting to be used and has the potential to make us more efficient by 20 to 30%. And that's the kind of experience that other areas have had. So those were two particular areas I wanted to focus on. I think we also had quite a good update on digital strategy, and we'll be talking more about the electronic patient record project later. So those were the main issues that we covered. Thank you.
Okay, aware that when we get to improving value, we'll pick up on the deficit funding issue. So can we pick that up under there? Would anyone like to make any comments on the matters? Thank you very much, Julian, for bringing this to board as well, and substituting very ably for Lynn's on this one. Thank you. Is there any specific questions on the report? And if not, I'm going to get people to note. But David, yes.
Couple of, just agree with Julian. I had a very good finance and performance meeting, and it is it's light and day now, the integrated performance report, and the quality of the presentation, but the narrative and the explanation. And it's interesting in getting more into explanation. There's a danger of NEDs get drawn more and more in. I think that's the challenge really for us as a board. A couple of comments really. I think Caroline said it. The localities have been around for around 9 months. It's time that there is a kind of review about whether or not generally the kind of staffing level, resourcing level is correct, and particularly focusing on Central Norfolk. Obviously, we've got to look internally about where that balance is right. But if you look at Central Norfolk, it's systemically been a historical issue for this trust, and for a whole variety of reasons, not least because it's the busiest area and it's the most densely populated in terms of other agencies on the field. So we've got to look both internally but also in terms of our partnership working, particularly I think in Central Norfolk, to give them a chance to sort of begin to improve. The other comment that I wanted to make is partly about partnerships, and it's really about the MAID event. And if we stand back and look at that in terms of bed census, the clinical bed management sort of review now, and it's about flow. It's how people get into the system, how people get out of our care as well. And so I'm really pleased that the management at last getting a grip on understanding which patients are going where and beginning to look at appropriateness of placements. But equally so, I just think the MAID event said to me, and I see we're doing another one this month, is the multi-agency approach for MAID in terms of people have lives in communities, they don't have lives in hospitals. So we've got to sort of almost start at that beginning point if we need to work back to that in terms of their ongoing care and support. And I'm particularly thinking about local authority and housing associations in terms of housing need. So my plea really is, whilst we've got to get our own house in order, because it has a financial impact as well about patients' experiences, we've really got to keep on doing a lot more work in terms of our partnership working and getting our partners to stand up and be counted.
Yeah, thanks, David. Caroline?
Just quickly to respond to those. I completely agree in terms of we're 9 months in to the localities, and we are doing, as I think colleagues know, a locality review, and we are looking at management capacity, and one of the key areas will be Central Norfolk. We're also looking at reporting lines, hosting arrangements, and Gary is leading that. I couldn't agree more in terms of the partnerships, and now we're really starting to improve significantly. We're really reaching out and developing much stronger opportunities for partnerships. So we've just had an exec-to-exec meeting with Norfolk County Council. We've had exec-to-exec with Mind in Norfolk. We're doing the same. We've already had Suffolk Council. And we particularly talked about housing as one of the priorities. Kath is taking the lead on developing, we're planning a conference, aren't we, with housing providers, and obviously with a lot of districts having the responsibility for housing and the transition and turbulence that's happening at the moment with all the unitary changes. That's in a bit of turmoil, but we can't wait 2 years till that settles. So it's a really high priority for us.
Thanks for that, Caroline. Roger?
Yeah, thank you for those reports. I just wanted to make a general point or a question. In those areas where we have underperformance, and I want to pick out any in particular, a fundamental question ought to be, do we have enough resource to provide those services in an effective and efficient manner or not? And I'm being, through committee work and things like that, we're being told actually we do have enough resource. So the fundamental question then becomes, are we applying the resource we've got appropriately or not? And I'm reminded about COVID, the COVID experience, where the hospital I worked at became super efficient when we started ditching things that weren't core to the delivery of health services. And I know that over time, any organisation, a hospital included, starts to do things that isn't always focused on delivering its core job. And I just wonder, the bed census was an example where we discovered that one of the reasons that discharge was slow was because the approval for discharge was only happening once a week, when it might have otherwise been done once a day. So those questions could be applied across the whole thing. And likewise with the neurodivergence waiting list. And I don't understand the assessment process, but do we have a system where perfection is the enemy of good enough at the moment? So are we providing really, really intense good things for a few people at the expense of providing something that's very adequate and sufficient for a lot? Sorry, I've rambled a bit.
No, not at all. It's two really important points. I'm gonna have a concertina discussion on this because Stuart is going to wrap this item up in exactly 14 minutes' time, and we are not quite a fifth of the way through so far. Caroline and then Faisal.
I'll just try and be really quick with that. I mean, it's a very broad question you pose, Roger, and I guess there's a whole complexity of answers to it. I think we definitely need to focus much more around pathways, and that's what we're doing with all of our programmes and productivity. We've got variation across many teams, but we've also got variation in models that are commissioned. So our memory assessment services has 7 different models that are commissioned. So, with the new ICB, there's a real opportunity there. We know that, as we've heard earlier on from Stuart, the massive demand increases in our NDD pathways, and we know with children, young people, we know people coming through in a crisis. So we definitely have high demand, but we still have got a lot of work to do to make sure that we're supporting people in the most positive way in their communities to stop them needing to access crisis services. And that whole pathway redesign that we're doing is what I'd say.
I think what Caroline's saying is we are on the money. We know what we need to solve in order to be able to address the questions that you're rightly raising. Faisal?
Thank you. And it is a very broad question, and Caroline's kind of said what I was going to say. It is about the clinical models and making them fit for purpose. But we've said that before, and we've heard that before. I think the difference going forward is we've got to be much more creative about how we use other partners in developing those models. So I'm thinking about the voluntary sector. I'm thinking about getting our service users and carers involved in innovating for those models in a way that we've never done before. But you're absolutely right, Roger. We need fit-for-purpose clinical models, and that's what we're doing through our programmes.
Okay, thanks very much, Faisal. Stuart?
Thanks, Zoe. Move on to improving care now, please. So 2 areas I wanted to pick up on improving care. One's care plan compliance, because we're currently sitting at 82% against an 85% target. And the other one's clinical supervision, where we're sitting even lower at 72% against an 85% target. I'm going to hand over to Michael, who's going to feed back on the work that's going on in that particular area.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. And obviously tonight there's some improvement trajectories and plans being made by the localities, and we'll be monitoring to see those as they progress. The key element as well is just judging the quality as well. So improving the numbers of supervision, it's key that it's an effective. So tomorrow we're going to be hearing at the LIA event about some fantastic work that one of the LIA work streams has been doing around making sure that quality supervision has that impact of supporting quality of care, because if it doesn't have the content and the detail, then the numbers don't add the value. So that's going to be another positive, and we have some fantastic support from our informatics team in having the detail of the information that enables teams to really see individually who needs that support to ensure that they have clinical supervisors and clinical supervision. So we'll be able to track that quite closely.
Okay, thanks, Michael. I'll now hand over to Roger for the Quality Committee Chair's report, please.
Thank you, Stuart. I'll take the report as read. There's quite a lot of good news in it, but there is one area where the committee identified a new risk that I think is worthy of attention by the whole board, and that is the one of influenza immunisation rates within staff of our trust, which is 40%. So this was received in the infection prevention control report. That level is inadequate and poses a dual risk, one of infection within our service users and patients who are vulnerable, but probably more importantly is the possibility that our services will be very, very badly affected in an epidemic, which is not unusual to get an epidemic, particularly we don't always know which age cohorts are going to be picked out by influenza, and it is possible that working age individuals will be struck down by the illness, and we aren't going to be able to provide the services that we need to do, given that this is a severe illness. COVID is not where we are anymore. Influenza has returned to #1 spot. So I've been pleased to see that already that Anthony has been setting in motion a re-energised immunisation program for the trust. But I think it is something that the board needs to track in order to make sure that by the beginning of winter we're up at an appropriate level, which is not 40%. I'd prefer to see something more like 80 to 90%.
Okay, so what's the plan?
So, as you referred to, Roger, we discussed the implementation plans. So we've been able to increase the available flu crew, as we call them, which is stepping up a range of clinical colleagues to be able to support the administration of the flu vaccine to our frontline colleagues. That's enabled us to be able to offer over 2,000 more appointments, and it's a roving crew, so we've got static places where colleagues can come and join, but they're also going onto the wards, they're going to visit colleagues, making it as easy as accessible. And we launched the individual communications to each individual staff member to have that email, so many of us will have had that in this last week, and over 800 people have already booked into the clinics just in this week, and then the immunisation programme starts specifically from next week. So we will be tracking that very closely, and as Roger says, the NHSE commitment is a 5% increase, but as Roger says, our goal is to go much further than that improvement.
Okay, I note that we've got ours today, and I did get the email, thank you very much, but we're not the vast majority of people working in the trust, so it's good to hear that. Is there anything more that needs to be done in order to ensure that we get up to the kind of rates that we need to see?
I think we have our plan, and it's the close monitoring of that plan and adjusting, using the intelligence of the information to show us where are those localities and those teams. In addition, I should have added as well, we have for our inpatient service users as well, especially those in our older inpatient services, we have the vaccine that we were able to deliver to ensure to support them as well.
Thank you very much, Michael. Roger, may we note the committee report?
Yes, that was the only thing I really wanted to raise.
Thank you very much, Roger. Let's note that report. Thank you very much. Stuart?
Thanks, Zoe. Going to move on to improving culture now, and two areas I wanted to highlight, both sickness. One, 5.7% annualised sickness absence against a 5% target, and the other, in-month sickness absence rate at 2.3% against 2% target. I'm going to bring Jeremy in, who's got some updates on how we're managing that particular area. Over to you, Jeremy.
Yes, thank you. I'll try and use so what and what next to be nice and succinct about this. So the two you've highlighted, Stuart, are obviously linked. One contributes to the other. And looking at the graphs in the IQPR, it's clearly long-term sickness absence that is contributing to our overall position. The month-on-month trajectory with short-term sickness is above target, but is decreasing. So the so what really is understanding our colleagues in the organisation who are on long-term sick. So these are numbers, but these are also people. And I've brought in a much more focused approach with my team for the particular colleagues in our organisation who have been off the longest, to make sure that support is wrapped around them and their line managers to either to bring them back to work with the support of our staff wellbeing services and occupational health. What next with this really is also around enhancing the training and support that we have for line managers. We talked about the Kind and Compassionate Workplaces programme earlier. That is one fundamental part of that. We want line managers who are on the front foot, who are building great relationships with their staff so that they can support them during periods of short-term sickness to make sure they don't become long-term sickness. So that is the priority in the more medium term as we improve our line manager capability.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'll hand over now to Paul to provide an update on the People and Culture Committee.
Thanks. Just want to pick up three quick. Oh, thank you, Jeremy. Yeah. Just want to pick up three quick areas. One of them we're talking about later on the agenda, but corporate services redesign. We had a really good conversation about the process and the risks associated with that particular programme that Tom came to talk to committee about. I think it highlighted for us how we continue to support staff as the new structures are implemented, and how we manage risks and realise benefits going forward. So, okay, we're in a period of change now and transition, but I think managing that transition to the new is going to be critical as well. We also talked about the staff survey, which was launched yesterday, and we reflected on results from previous years, which are obviously not improving, and a focus on trying to increase participation rates, particularly by targeting colleagues within our localities and our clinical staff, recognising that we're again launching a staff survey in the midst of a major change, organisational change that affects corporate services. So we talked very much about how we can support people to actually participate effectively and also get a handle on the things that have changed and improved over the last 12 months rather than just focusing on the negative. And the third area was around employee relations, which I think is a really important area. We received an improvement plan around employee relations, which is focused really, I guess, on helping us to move towards kinder and more compassionate workplace. A lot of our employee relations issues are not getting resolved quickly. They're getting to formal situations when they should have been dealt with very early. And there's a lot of work to be done to reduce that and to also translate that into a more just and learning culture principles that are going to underpin that. So I think it's important for the board to be aware of those three particular items.
That's really super helpful. Thank you very much, Paul. In terms of the staff survey, Are we satisfied that we are taking all of the measures that other trusts take to enable staff to have the time or to be incentivised to complete the staff survey? It's really important for us we get the richest possible picture, isn't it? So was that discussed at your committee, Paul? And are you assured that we are doing absolutely everything that we could to increase the rates?
There's always more that can be done to encourage staff to engage, but I think certainly what we saw at committee was a communication and engagement plan that would drive up participation and targeting particular areas and creating space for people to complete the survey. Jeremy obviously wants to add to that, and I know Rebecca's involved in that as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you very much. A partnership approach with our communications colleagues. Executives have reviewed a holistic communications plan for our staff survey. The survey is live over the course of the next 8 weeks, and we've mapped out those 8 weeks with the various activities that will promote engagement and participation in the survey. Yes, a lot of that is around our corporate messaging and highlighting the importance of what taking part in the survey does, and in our communications from Caroline to colleagues, we've highlighted the real positive things that we've done this year as an organisation to support staff, as well as that encouraging colleagues in our localities to make sure that they themselves are promoting the importance of the survey with their own teams and creating time and space for people to do it. We've got some additional things that we're doing this year around promotion of the response rate and perhaps a bit of competition between our localities and corporate services, as well as considering some incentives for people to take part.
Noted.
Thank you.
Did you want to know the chair's report?
Oh yeah, I was noting Jeremy, but I think we should also note the chair's report. Thank you very much indeed. Are we happy to note the report of the chair of the People and Cultures Committees? Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Now hand over to Jason, who's going to provide an update on improving value.
Thanks, Stuart. So, yeah, as I previously mentioned at previous meetings, that the month 5 position, we're really in the right place, but for the wrong reasons. So we are showing a deficit of 1.9 million year to date. That's in line with plan, but that's been achieved with the use of 6.1 million of non-recurrent items. We have seen a significant improvement, and we previously mentioned this, in our out of trust position, and that has a significant impact on the financial position of the trust, which has led to a net risk within the financial position of £1.1 million. However, we're still forecasting a break-even position at year end, and it's pleasing to note that the financial recovery plan is 0.2 million ahead of plan, and we brought that previously to board, so that is encouraging. What we do need to see still is a reduction in the monthly expenditure run rates to recover the deficit position we are in at the moment, and that's in line with plan, but we do need concerted effort to improve that run rate to deliver the plan, and the key to that is the delivery of the recurrent efficiency programme, which Tom alluded to earlier, and that's why we've marked that as a red risk within our large-scale change programmes. We also mentioned that we've set a stretch target. So in the original plan, we'd split our EVI target of 18.7 million, efficiency value and improvement target of 18.7 million between a 3% recurrent and a 2% non-recurrent target. We are targeting the full 5% as recurrent, and this will help us for sustainability going forwards into future years. It also links into the future years deficit funding. So if we can get that recurrent level of savings up, it will really support us speaking to Julian a moment ago, weaning off our deficit support funding. The one thing I did want to raise in terms of highlight of risk is the point that Julian raised from Performance and Finance Committee, and it's the risk of losing deficit support funding, and that's as a result of the system financial position. So as at month 5, the system was 4.4 million behind plan, and that if we don't receive the deficit funding for the remainder of the year, that equates to a risk of £5.1 million. The only other things I wanted to cover were the capital plan is 1.8 million behind plan year to date. That's entirely due to timing differences, and we expect the full year capital plan to be in line with the plan. We are still going through the approval process for some of the national capital funding that's coming through, and we hope to have confirmation of circa 2 million of national funding imminently. In terms of cash, the cash balance remains healthy with 20.8 million. However, this can soon change if we do not receive that deficit support funding and we don't deliver on the EVI. So that although it's okay now, it can move significantly and quickly if we don't deliver. I will pause there and open for questions.
Thank you very much, Jason. Very clear. David.
Jason, really, on behalf of the executive, not wearing your director sort of chief financial officer hat, how confident are you that, in fact, we'll be able to achieve the savings that you've talked about, given the kind of historical reliance upon non-recurrent savings? I'm trying to understand if you think, and I really want some evidence, are we in a better position this year in terms of being on track to deliver, and there's some stretch targets there, than we have been in the past?
Yeah, so I think the report, it shows that we're currently showing an 11.6 million forecast outturn for our recurrent savings, which is far higher than we've ever achieved previously. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but there's work to do. But yeah, I'm confident that we will deliver more than we have ever previously. If it would be great if we achieved the full 18.7 million recurrently. I think that might be a stretch, but we've got to aim for it, and we've got to stretch ourselves to do that. So I think that's, in terms of confidence, yeah. If you ask me to put my house on achieving the 18.7, I'd probably not. But we have to aim for it.
Certainly better than the previous year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I assume there's a plan B if we don't make that, to bring the savings in through non-recurrent. Is that,
yeah.
Right?
Actually, if we focused on the confidence point in terms of hitting the forecast full year position break even, I am completely confident that we will hit that at this moment.
So you're going to put the house on that one, but not the other one?
Probably, yeah. But this is being recorded. yeah. Don't tell my partner.
It's an important question, though, for us, isn't it? Hearing that as a board. But Caroline.
Yeah, just wanted to emphasise that the cultural transformation that we're going through, because we know that historically the Trust has really struggled to deliver recurring savings which are all about transformation rather than salami slicing. So for me this is the heart of quality, so that we're planning to improve our quality by becoming more efficient and not reacting to making short-term savings that is not helpful from a patient care point of view. And so we're really striving through the localities to say, if it's not recurrent, it's not a saving. Now there's a significant cultural challenge and skill challenge, that gap that we're overcoming, and we've still got a lot of development to do across our leaders. But I just wanted to make that connection with quality. Thank you.
It's a really important point, isn't it? And in terms of the key risks that has been highlighted by both Jason and Julian, this question of if our system is in deficit, there's the ability for the funders to pull our deficit funding mid-year. So that's the kind of the danger that we face, isn't it? Am I right in that? we've made our views plain, haven't we, Caroline, on that? But is there anything more that we ought to be doing in order to safeguard the trust against that clawback of that money that's fundamental to us achieving our ambitions to transform?
If I may just come in, I mean, clearly that's a national model, and we've already, as we know, have written to both the region and the ICB to set out our case. Should the system not deliver its plan? It's already in a deficit plan. It's got deficit support. If it shouldn't, then we think, given the history of this trust and the inequity of mental health funding, that shouldn't land on us. I think going forward, what's really important is we're now working on a business case that sets out to our new ICB why we believe that we should have more funding for mental health, which would help to put us in a more sustainable position going forward. Now that's obviously going to be contentious because money's got to come from somewhere, but that's what we're working on at the moment and plan to do that by the end of this quarter so that it can be part of the negotiations.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions, but thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Zoe. I'll just move over now to ask Julian to come in and provide the Chair's report for the Audit and Risk Committee, please.
So, good Audit and Risk Committee. Two big concerns for us this time round, particularly around the whole internal audit recommendation process. So we're already doing an internal audit tender, which is going forward at the moment for our new provider from next year. But the process of responding to recommendations and also delivering those implementations on time is not working quite as well as we would like it to. The internal audit programme is important to wrap around and give us assurance about, particularly on quality issues. And so I'm really pleased that since our meeting there's been a lot of executive commitment to looking at this in a lot more detail, and I'm expecting this to improve really quite quickly. One really good example of the internal audit programme is the restrictive interventions internal audit report, which we received last time. It had a limited assurance rating, and so there were a series of recommendations really to help us ensure that restrictive interventions are only used as a last resort. So that was a concern which we referred to quality and performance, to Quality Committee, so that they were aware of that issue as well. And so we're expecting those recommendations to be implemented quickly. Those were the main concerns. Happy to take questions or for you to note the report.
Thank you very much, Julian. Tom and then Caroline.
Yeah, so just on the internal audit piece, yeah, completely recognise that. As well as going through the tendering process, we need to make sure we're delivering on those actions currently for this year and this year's provider. So in terms of the changes we've put in place, we're developing our own internal digital system to track actions and follow up and log and record actions. They're coming into exec on a fortnightly basis, so we've got exec oversight directly over those actions. So we've strengthened that process.
Thanks very much. Shall we note the report of the Chair of Audit and Risk Committee? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Zoe. And then the last committee report, just ask Helen to come in and provide the Chair's report for the Medical Legislation Committee, please.
Yeah, thank you. We're not in a position yet to provide the board sort of full assurance, but this is work in progress. And as I was mentioning earlier, by the November meeting, we will have the new reporting in place that will get us into a position where we are able to answer more of the so what and what next questions. So if I just sort of focus at that will include national comparative data rather than just looking at kind of straight numbers of detentions under various parts of the Act. And in terms of what next, we've already identified the programme over the next year will include a number of deeper dives where there are questions about performance in relation to Section 117, aftercare arrangements, and we've started to look at that in our meeting. And then going forward, Section 132, patients' understanding of their rights, when they're detained under the Act, and then the use of advocacy, both mental health and mental capacity advocacy. Again, at the next meeting, we will be bringing an overview of the work and the issues being raised through the associate hospital managers into that committee. And we now have a specific risk on the BAF, and we've asked that the trajectory of improvement to reduce that risk is just reviewed to see whether we can accelerate that at all. So I think the work is going well, and we'll be in a better place by the next board meeting to give the board better assurance.
Any questions of Helen? Just a comment from me. I think it's really important that this committee is doing the work that it is and is bringing far greater assurance in this area, albeit, as you say, Helen, it's developing. And can we just record our thanks to Helen and the committee members for ensuring that we're improving our position in this regard. Thank you. Shall we note that report? Thank you, noted. Anything else, Stuart?
No, that's the end of the IQPR section.
Has anyone got any general comments on where we are in terms of our major risks, how we're dealing with those, and what we as a board need to consider as a matter of priority, or are you content that we've covered off the areas? Good, okay, thank you very much indeed for that, Stuart. That is a big agenda item, but it's bringing lots of composite parts together, so thank you for that. I think I'm now going on to the National Oversight Framework, which is again you, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks, Zoe. So this is an update on the National Oversight Framework Q1 refresh. So if you remember, we came to the board development session and provided an update on the National Oversight Framework and how it was going to operate. I've got to be honest and say that I don't think it's absolutely a done deal yet. I think they're still changing it and altering it slightly, and we're seeing that in some of the changes in how they're measuring some of the metrics. But this particular report is just providing an update on the Q1 refresh, and that's saying that we have made some improvement across several metrics for NSFT. We've improved across children and young people's access to NHS funded mental health services, and in patients who have a length of stay exceeding 60 days, and also the percentage of patients in crisis being seen face-to-face within 24 hours. And the sickness absence rates improved as well, so all good stuff. However, that doesn't mean that we've moved in terms of NOF. So if you recall, we're currently in NOF 4. So the National Outcome Framework, we're in it's classed as NOF 4, but this hasn't gotten any better through this Q1 refresh, and we didn't expect it to be honest with you. And some of the reasons for that is where a quartile that a metric is measured in is actually worsened, or whereby we've done well but other providers have done better than us in that particular metric, therefore we haven't improved in that quartile measurement. It's also worth noting the changes that I said, they're still kicking this about and trying to get it to a better place. The sickness absence figure was initially comparing us against all providers across the NHS. Sorry, it was only measuring us historically against all mental health providers. It's now measuring us against all providers across the NHS, so that's a change as well. So we are now in quartile. We were in quartile 3 at the first quarter. We're now in quartile 4 for that particular measure. So they have changed the metric measurement on that one. The work that we're doing on this, and if I can take it to the slide pack on slide 9 of the pack, this is the benchmarks and the stuff that we're really working on. You can see that we're red, or we've metric that as red on a number of those metrics, and this is where the real work is being done in the organisation to look at these in detail. So, and we know exactly, because we've done the detailed analysis on this, to look at how we can really make a difference and get our NOF position to a much better place. And we think that where we can make the real difference is looking at children and young people's access to NHS funded mental health services, the rate of restrictive intervention use, length of stay over 60 days, sickness absence, and people in crisis being seen within 24 hours. And if we really focus on those, we can get a movement in our NOF scoring. So we've actually started to look at those and pull those into as a key metric within our QPGs for the localities as well. So we can have real in-depth conversations in the quality performance groups. We're asking each of the groups to come back with trajectories of improvement for that particular metric as well. We're also focusing on engaging on the NHS staff survey. However, we won't see any real improvement in the scoring until quartile 4 because the report students the yearly. And the other one is in the community mental health assessment as well. That comes out on a yearly basis as well. So we've just got to wait until they come out and are published before we can get a change to that. But, you know, there's lots of work happening within the staff survey as been discussed in the earlier report. I'll leave it there and open up for questions, Claude. Zoe.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think it's worth reminding everyone that there are 5 segments of the NOF framework now, not 4. Any questions? Caroline and then Helen. Just observations.
It's a comment really, because it's so flipping complex to try and get your head around. And the model is being built that there's always going to be 20, well, because of NOF 5 is still to be announced. At the moment, NOF 4, there's always going to be 25% of trusts in each of the 4 quartiles, which are then adjusted for the financial position. So if the whole of the NHS improves, we're still going to identify a quarter as poorly performing, which is just, sorry to say, my view is it's not an incentivised improvement model. But I think it's confusing with the way we're describing it at the moment around quartiles, and I wonder if we could reframe that as to NOF segments. So for each of the metrics, then we know which particular segment we're in, because there's sometimes one is high and sometimes it's not. Thanks, Stuart.
Yes, I had to do a bit of a double take on that when I read the papers as well. That would be helpful. Helen.
Yeah, I would concur with Caroline's sentiments about this, and was interested to see the Health Service Journal describe this is the approach to sort of Alan Milburn's greatest hits, really, which it is a bit of a replay of. And I suppose just reflecting back on, you know, there are many positive things about performance metrics and enabling focus, but just that risk for the trust. So I really welcome this. Is a very helpful analysis. But I think, you know, overall, we've got to continue focusing on doing the right thing, our major transformation programs, and that will deliver us ultimately. And so we've just got to keep a balance of, you know, these small number of metrics that can shift the dial, but not just focusing on those, because that will take us down, I think, a dangerous path.
Any thoughts on that? Can I build on that just before you do? Would you mind? I mean, I think this is the absolute danger of these very, very crude performance tables. It's interesting, isn't it, that in mental health, I think there's something like 10, 11 indicators. In physical health, there's, I think, 3 or 4 times that. So we're only getting a partial view. My anxiety, in line with Helen's really, is we're clear on what our priorities are in NSFT. We've talked about them under the IQPR. Can we please have a discussion about whether or not our shift in focus to shift the dial on NOF is going to potentially mean we are applying less resource and focus to some of the areas that we've already decided are our priorities. I would like a really clear, maybe not here, but a really clear articulation of why that might not be the case, why, you know, staff survey results are really important and so on. But I think we probably need a line by line on these at some point to provide that assurance. Caroline and then Stuart.
Discussed this, haven't we, in our board strategy sessions, and I think it's really important that we assure ourselves that these are aligned with our priorities. And I think we can bring that back, Chair, in the next report. I think they absolutely are. You know, if it's sickness, it's aligned with improving culture. Crisis, we've already talked about, high priority. Restrictive practice, right at the heart of our work to improve quality. Length of stay, completely aligned with our out-of-trust placements work. Children, young people's access. And we need to build this in the overall performance report, yes, so that we can see it in an integrated way. And then just highlight why we are benchmarking with other trusts. The other thing I would just alert is, obviously the previous metrics we've had for the last 5 years have aligned with the areas of priority of the mental health 5-year forward plan, and we'd got ourselves to the position of on every single metric we were above England average, which was pretty impressive. And obviously now there's a different suite of metrics. Now for the acute sector there's 30 metrics, and for the mental health sector there's 10 metrics. So again, a disparity. So there's more work being done nationally to develop more metrics for mental health sector, which I think should be good, but we'll have to see where that lands. So they will increase, it won't stay at 10. Thank you.
So I think I'm going to buy myself a shovel and move those goalposts yet again, because that seems to be the thing to do in NHSE in order to be successful. Tom?
I can't comment on that point, but and just as Caroline said, those updated metrics hopefully will give us greater equity with physical health partners. We should see them at the start of 2026 for the next financial year, and the hope will be that these things start to align. So our planning guidance should start to align and things should start to be brought together. But I'd stress the word hope probably at this point. We'll see.
Deeply disappointed that you weren't accompanying me down to Wix as we speak in order to buy that shovel, Tom. Any other comments? Can you get a shovel in Wix? Yeah, good. David?
Quick one. The NHS is a steamroller, and you've got to learn how to get out the way at the right time on the right things. I think the way that was expressed by Caroline and by Helen is that you've got to be quite cute about this. I think if we get more suite of activities that we've got to hit, I think we'll play it into our performance. But what you can't do is book the system, and reputation management is so important in terms of how the NHS views you. In terms of literally its perceptions of sometimes being more forgiving than it might be. So it's really about, candidly, we've got to continue to play the national game, but be cute in the way that we do it, that doesn't detract from literally the transformation that the organisation has been undergoing so far, and has still got some work to do on. So basically, we just got to sort of play it as the NHS sees it, really, but be smart with it. But we can't afford to buck the system and lose the goodwill and the reputation this trust now has.
I'll just come back on that one, David. I'm very happy for us to focus on improving those particular metrics that are in the NOF framework, the National Oversight Framework, if we are absolutely certain that's going to improve quality of services for our patients in Norfolk and Suffolk. If it isn't, then I'm not prepared to play the game. But we have got that assurance today, and we're going to make sure that that comes back. And that's really important. I also think it's incredibly important, the point that Caroline made. When we're reviewing the IQPR, I think it would be really helpful for us to have a way of highlighting these particular 10 metrics within it, so that we can be doing that read across and keeping our eye on the ball on that. Anything else, Stuart?
No, the only thing I would say on the back of that is that that's the plan. Everything you've just said is exactly the plan that will go for the IQPR. So you will see quite clear that it's enough metric that we're measuring.
That's really helpful. Thanks very much indeed for that. So, is the board happy to note that report? This is a bit where I always go wrong, Jason. Was your finance update effectively what you just said, or have you got anything else to say?
Nothing more to say.
Thank you very much. Can we note Jason's report on finance and the next steps? And can we now move on to the corporate redesign update paper? Tom?
Yeah, thanks, Zoe. So as I mentioned earlier, this is one of our most significant large-scale change programmes for this year. It's been a programme that we've planned for a while now, following the locality structure, and we've been working to a series of principles to ensure that our corporate services are of high quality, fit for purpose, to make sure they better align and better support our localities. there's an efficiency element to this too, as well as looking to try and strengthen career progression. So since this paper was published last week, we've just concluded the consultation phase of our programme. We concluded that earlier this week. We had really strong engagement from our staff and from our staff side colleagues throughout the consultation process. And throughout that process, we held sessions with our corporate teams, one-to-ones with staff, and all staff webinars. And I think we've responded to over 500 FAQs over the course of that period. So really engaged staff group, and we've shared those answers back on the intranet and directly with staff. So now this week we're in the process of finalising structures. We're going to move into the recruitment phase for this programme. So at the moment we're finalising structures, and I can't go into all of the detail until we've got to that finalised position. We will be communicating with effective staff next week. What I can say is that those structures are being finalised, and reflecting the feedback that we've received, and there'll be changes across a number of teams, which I think shows that we've consulted meaningfully over this period. We've also been developing our recruitment approach, so we'll be recruiting into these new structures over October and into the start of November. And I think it's important to note here that we're taking an internal first approach, so we will only be going out to advert externally at the end of this process if we've exhausted all internal options, and the aim of this is to reduce redundancy as far as possible. As Paul just mentioned, another key area is the transition and transformation of services. So as well as changing structures, we need to change the way that our corporate services operate so they best support our locality colleagues and ultimately our service users. And that's what we're currently working through at the moment with corporate leads. The scale of change is varied between teams, so that's something we're working with our corporate leads on the individual level as well as collectively. So happy to answer any further questions on that point, and happy to commit to bringing back our final position to board once we reach it.
Yes, and of course we note, Tom, that you're limited in what you're able to say here in public because of the stage of the process that we've got to, which is not complete. So thank you for that. Has anyone got any questions? No? Okay, could we note the report on the update on corporate redesign? Thank you. Let's move on now to the Safer Staffing National Reporting. Hello, Michael.
Hello. Yes, this is the scheduled Safe Staffing Report, and there's 4 points I'd just like to bring to the attention. So the report shows that the controls and the processes that we have in place to meet established staffing levels remain active and in control, and where we do have the needs for additional staffing, that those controls and actions are applied. That does mean the use of temporary staff, and that is something that we recognise the impact that has both positively in terms of providing care, but also in terms of quality. Our aim is to reduce that as much as possible so that we can provide consistent care. And to that point, we've been learning from other organisations that have been looking at the use of additional observations, enhanced observations, and seeing where we can see how we can use alternative ways to support people in terms of their care through things like zonal observations. So we're due to receive an early evaluation of the work that we're doing there. Alongside that, we have the scheduled in December the MDT review, which we're doing, and that will continue. That's in action, and we'll be receiving that report in the December board. And we've been having the extraordinary subgroup of the Quality Committee that has been receiving updates on the progress around the registered nurse adults matter. That is progressing, and we've been transparent in supporting all our stakeholders and our executives to have a really good understanding on the progress that we're making. Some of the final stages of that include the conclusions of our clinical harm reviews that go back to give ourselves our assurance that we about the impacts of that on the care that we provided. And also in supporting we was able to support a small number of colleagues to take the test of competence in order to also be able to attain their registered nurse mental health status, and we're also working through to support our registered nurse adults in terms of their support in all of our inpatient wards as well. Thank you.
Thanks Thanks very much. So it's an update, obviously this has been thoroughly reviewed elsewhere in our board committees. Is there anything that you'd like the board to discuss in particular here, Michael, or are you saying that actually the plan is working in the way that should be expected?
The plan's working as expected, so to note the report.
And I'm getting a nod from Roger as well. Would anyone like to ask any questions on that? Helen?
It's not a question, it's just that I've been part of that extraordinary subcommittee of the Quality Committee looking at the registered nurse adults, and actually been very impressed by the rigour of the approach, been a very thorough approach, and it's been shared with external partners, CQC, Healthwatch and others. So I think that's a really strong piece of work that I hopefully should come into business as usual after the next meeting, should probably be the final one of that subcommittee.
Yeah, it was a really good, I mean, you know, credit to Anthony for initiating that right from the get-go. I think it was a really good example of how we respond when we need to respond rapidly and at pace. So let's note that that's the position now, and we'll go into business as usual. Caroline?
Just to concur with that, we met with the CQC in our formal regular meetings this week, and they shared the level of assurance they've had through that external group, and were really pleased with the progress and concurred that they felt that the next meeting would be the last meeting. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Michael. Are we happy to note the safe staffing report? Oh, sorry, Jason. Sorry, apologies.
Yeah, comments an observation on the individual fill rates. So looking month to month, we're seeing an improvement in the day fill rates, and we have seen an improvement in the night fill rates for CSWs, but there's still quite stubborn in particular areas, and I think we need to really focus on those particular areas in terms of those CSW night fill rates to reduce that risk.
Thanks very much, Jason. Happy to note the report, colleagues. Lovely, thanks very much. Now turn to the Service User and Carer Council report. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm delighted to see Talia here. I think Kath may be introducing, but Talia, please, if you feel comfortable, please feel welcome to contribute.
Thank you very much. Well, Kath's going to actually present the summary, so I hope that's okay. I'll hand over to Kath.
Thank you so much. I will take the report as read, just point out a few highlights, if that's okay, in terms of next steps. So you can see that we're working with Rethink Mental Health as a partner with regard to supporting the development of our Service User and Carer Council at trust level, but also the development of our 5 locality councils, which will be in place by the end of this calendar year. And we are taking the opportunity through that recruitment that takes place, and we have a stand at the annual general meeting that Zoe referenced earlier on, where council members are going to be trying to recruit people, or at the very least express interest for people who would want to be on those locality councils. But it also gives us that opportunity to enhance the trust-wide council, taking into account opportunities where we have potential gaps with regard to representation and diversity, particularly people with a learning disability or their carers, people from a black or minority ethnic background. So we're really going to use the opportunity to try and be as representative as possible. So I'll stop there, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
No, thank you. It's really great to hear this update, and very exciting to hear about the plans to incorporate our localities within the sort of the ambit, if you like, of the Service User and Carer Council. So thank you very much for that. Questions? Caroline?
Thank you, and lovely to see you here, Talia. I just think one of the really important areas that I know you've been working on is the confidentiality policy and common sense confidentiality, because I think historically service users, carers, families have felt, particularly carers and families, that sometimes the Trust hasn't always applied the confidentiality principles in the best interests of the patient. I wonder if you could just say a little bit about that and how we're going to roll it out?
We've had a lot of discussions, haven't we,
We
about it?
we have. We had a good discussion at our last meeting in August about it. So common sense confidentiality is something that's really important. And anybody who's had the opportunity to listen to Trevor Stevens, who's one of our the parents of a service user who took their own life, his daughter Toby, has been really active and supporting the Listening into Action Think Family and Carer programme, where much of this has come from, and we've involved the Service User and Carer Council in that discussion. At the Listening into Action Pass It On event, which is tomorrow taking place, we are going to formally launch the Common Sense Confidentiality Policy, which is about bringing to life this principle of there are times when it's so important to not just speak to families and carers, but at the very least listen to them and encourage that professional curiosity, and with clarity that the professional support through Faisal as Chief Medical Officer and Anthony as Chief Nurse is there for clinical colleagues to assess when it's appropriate to speak to families and carers, and have that full professional support to do so. And this has come, as I say, not just from Trevor, but also our serious mental illness carers that we have been working with over the last few years, about how excluded families and carers can feel in the care of individuals. And we know that families and carers are absolutely integral and critical to keeping people well and safe. So I feel really excited that this common sense confidentiality adjunct to our policy, which we will launch, will transform the way in which we talk about confidentiality. And I really push in that we stop talking about breaching confidentiality and we start using a much more appropriate, clinically appropriate language of potentially there are times when we can't honour the wishes of individuals because it's about safety and well-being. Both we have to factor in the well-being of the families and carers as well, not just service users. So I could go on for hours. It's so exciting. And the fact that we've co-developed and co-produced this common sense confidentiality policy with absolute support from our information governance manager, Richard Green. Thank you.
Thanks, Kath. I'm going to just take Chair's prerogative on this. I mean, this is really, really, really important. When we're talking about my priority of putting carers at the heart of everything, this is about including carers in their loved one's care and speaking to them when on occasions their loved one is so poorly they're not in that able to do so, or even actively asking us not to. So, one, I'm delighted that we're going to launch this policy. Two, I do hope that we will really go large on communicating this. And three, it would be really helpful to understand how we're going to ensure that our staff are acting in accordance with it and how we're going to track that for Faisal.
I just wanted to say this is really, really important, and it's an issue that's been lingering for years, not just in our organisation and system, but up and down the country. So, moving away from punitive, legalistic language like breaching confidentiality, acting in the best interests of our service users and carers, and then supporting the people that need to make those decisions, often under quite challenging circumstances. This is an excellent development, and I'm really, really excited. Thank you.
And can I just add, for me, this is an example of the work we're doing to improve the recording of carers. Can't just make a metric of improvement without action being taken. And for me, this is a critical action, because this is underpinning why it's so important for us to know who our carers are and make sure they're documented. But it is, for me, also an opportunity to celebrate listening into action as the methodology that's been the platform for this improvement, and co-producing it with essentially a big part of this is triggered from the voices of service users, carers and families. So I just thought I would take that opportunity.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Kath, and of course Talia, for ensuring that this important issue is brought to the fore. Paul?
Yeah, thank you. It's great to see the development of the Service User Council, and also it's starting to make an impact on actually how we think and behave in the organisation. I guess I see that you're still working on that, discussions of going forward. So I guess my question is about the relationship with the Council of Governors, because obviously that's a critical one. Service user representatives are in there as well. So it's how do we make sure that there is no duplication, there's good alignment, and that both can champion service users in our organisation?
I'll have a start. So we're very much working on our identity at the moment, and there's been a big conversation around how we can have influence, because the Service User and Carer Council, we are not assurance, we're not governors, and we're not the board. I'm non-voting, but I sit here as non-voting, so there isn't going to be duplication. Rebecca sits at our meetings, and she is very established in what is a governor's role and what is ours. We are still developing how our influence is going to play out. So you can be confident we're not going to cross over with the governors, but there is going to somehow at some point become a link, I hope.
Yeah. I think that's the critical part there. We're not duplicating, but as we're evolving as a council, it's understanding how then we can be a partner with the Council of Governors and make us both as two groups more effective together.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Talia. Obviously, with your background as having been a former member of our Council of Governors, you bring great insight into that as well. It is absolutely right, as Paul says, it's something that, I'm chair of governors as well as chair of the board. It's something that we talk about as governors, and let's think about at the right time how we can make sure that there's a coming together, if you like, and maybe an invitation of yourself, Talia, to the Council of Governors meeting, and we can have a discussion about how we're both going to work together in the best interests of our service users and carers. Could we take that as an action, please, and maybe outside of here put an appropriate time frame on that? Thank you. Anyone else want to come in on that? No. It's lovely to have you here, Talia. You're welcome to contribute on this item and in the future any other items that you feel comfortable about as well. So can we please note the update from the Service User and Carer Council following the meeting that took place on the 21st of August. Noted. Thank you very much. We're now going to get a reward for very good behaviour. We're going to have another 5-minute break. We've got three substantive items. The Health and Safety Annual Report is a compliance issue which we can pretty much just note, and then I want to leave time for questions of 10 minutes. So we need to crack on. With that in mind, Michael.
Okay, thank you. And as we was referring to earlier around sustaining improvements and changes, this report, this very sensitive report that concerns and impacts us all, provides that update on the detail and the depth of the processes that we now have in place in order to examine and understand and learn from deaths. I think we can see that there's a good confidence that continues to be in the report. And the key element that we've seen also, we've been implementing the refreshed approach to our PSAF and really integrating that within our localities. And what that's meant is we've had that additional depth and range of local understanding of the themes and the trends of events that are happening in localities, able to also take action, but also then able to escalate that through to our trust-wide safety group. And the key element in the report also talks around that first phase, but moving into the phase of how do we demonstrate our learning and improvement. And the report shows a couple of examples in terms of the themes around the links with drug and alcohol, and we've been able to initiate some co-training that we've developed through or commissioned through from the local providers to make that available to our staff, and we'll be able to monitor and see the uptake and the impact of that. And in addition, we know another area of our focus has been around risk formulation, and the rollout of Storm is on track and progress to roll out by the end of March 2026. The key element then is, and Faisal will probably contribute as well, is in respect of our work around evidencing the impact of our approaches to learning and improving and working with our research department. So Nish has also been doing some work with us, but also our research department in really building up a strong framework.
Thank you. Faisal.
Yeah, just a very brief point, and that we're now connecting up our R&D colleagues with our nursing and quality colleagues, and have a connected conversation with the clinical audit as well, just to look at what we can learn from the data, but also going forward, how we can have sustainable learning from that data in a research project. So more to come.
That's great to hear. Thank you for that. Anything else, Michael and Faisal? Okay, so we're familiar, aren't we, with the Learning from Deaths reports? They've been coming to board for a time now. We've always said, haven't we, that it's important that we are able to understand why people who've had contact with the Mental Health Trust have died, and then to apply that learning to prevent those deaths happening in the first place. So it's encouraging that we're now beginning to move to that second and really vital phase of this entire programme. Is there any questions that anyone has on that, and how we might evidence and move to that place that we want to get to at pace? Paul?
It's slightly, well, it may be related to this, but it's just an observation about the data that we have around ethnicity and reporting. We still have 30% not stated and unknown, and I just wonder how we're tackling that. You know, what we're doing to actually close that gap.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really important point, Paul. Ethnicity reporting is critical for us to understand the services that we're providing and the impact that has, and we know people from a black or minority ethnic background experience inequalities as a result of that. So it's a feature of the health equity strategy and measurable improvements for the next item, but it's also absolutely fundamental with the patient and carer race equality framework plan. And we mentioned earlier on about the race equity large-scale change programme, for which it focuses both on workforce but also service users. So really important, fundamental, and features, as I say, across our strategic programmes.
So there's a plan in place which we will monitor the delivery of, presumably, Kath, is that right?
through those programmes.
Great. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. You happy with that?
Yeah, I think I recognise that that's a challenge because it pops up in different areas. The Freedom to Speak Up report highlights that as well. So just the question is, in my mind, are we doing enough, across the organisation to actually open this up so people feel comfortable and able to share their ethnicity when they, when they're actually accessing services or working within the organisation. I'm not sure I've seen that yet, but that would be helpful if it's embedded in those other programmes to really understand.
And that's something that will come under the auspices of the People and Culture Committee. Okay. Did you want to come in as well, Jeremy? Oh, good.
I was only going to say there's two lenses for this. So the People and Culture Committee will particularly focus on the ethnicity for staff, and the Quality Committee will really focus on the ethnicity recording for patients and carers under the PCREF framework. The new race equality group that we're bringing together is bringing those two work streams together, right, and so we can focus in a more integrated way going forward.
Okay, that's helpful to know. Thanks for that explanation. Okay, so it's a watch and see really, Paul, isn't it, in answer to your question, but there's a plan. Thank you. Any other questions? Roger.
Just a quick one. I really welcome the involvement of R&D in learning from this. What I'd be eager to see is the tangible commitment to cut her out, to not beat about the bush. How are we going to fund it? Because I think it's something that's not going to emerge out of the vacuum.
Okay, so do you mean in terms of we want some research as on the back of our data to tell us where we need to focus? Or are you questioning whether we're going to fund that or not?
Well, no, I think it needs to be commissioned. If it isn't by us, then who?
Okay, I'm going to ask Faisal to answer that.
Can I just say we're in the early conversations of connecting up our existing R&D group with our existing clinical audit group to look at what data we have so we can all look at the art of the possible. And obviously there's other areas we can go to for funding, but absolutely we want something sustainable.
I think Roger may be pushing at the question, if we want this piece of work done to benefit the Trust, why are we not funding it? Just to put it in another way, is that correct, Roger?
Yes, well, I think it is like a lot of research activity. If you want it, you have to find ways of funding it. And I think this is one of those areas we do desperately want.
Roger, I completely agree with you. I think what we have at the moment is a very, very good system. There's lots of very valid and reliable data, and the next phase of our work is to make sure we have learning both in the Trust and in the system. One part of that is to use research to analyse it better. So over the course of the next few weeks I'm going to meet with the nursing quality team and R&D and think about where we might go for funding in the future. And obviously, for example, one route would be NIHR and actually bidding for funding. But I'd like to start off by looking at in-house. What do we need to do before we start going out-house?
Thank you very much, Faisal. That's helpful. Any other questions? No. Can we note the report on learning from deaths? It's our quarterly report, and thank you very much, Michael, for introducing that. And let's move on to the health equity strategy. Kath.
Thank you so much, Zoe. So I'm really delighted to be able to present the health equity strategy to the board for approval today. Colleagues will remember a suite of enabling strategies that were approved at board last year, so 9 enabling strategies, which is now, this makes 10, and it reflects the real focus and priority of the Trust with regard to tackling the inequalities that our service users, carers and families experience, and working to a principle of improving health equity. The priorities that are set out within the strategy relate to prevention and population health, which links very much to the conversation we had earlier on in the board agenda with regard to understanding the inequalities that our service users experience. And there is a vast amount of intelligence and data across the system that we're not tapping into currently, which should influence our clinical transformation programmes and how we ensure that services are accessible to people based on their needs, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all. So it's very exciting. The second priority relates to delivering equitable services within neighbourhoods. So again, reflects the earlier conversation and the new large-scale change programme around locality neighbourhood working. It's really exciting. And what people, the analogy I use is what the people of Lowestoft need isn't necessarily the need of people who live in Southwold, which geographically is very close. It's within the same locality, yet hugely different needs. So that's why it's so important that we understand the needs of our population using that vast intelligence and translate that into services that people can access in a way that's meaningful and locally provided. The third priority is where we are focusing on suicide prevention. What I will say, historically within the organisation, whilst we recognise that many people across Norfolk and Suffolk that take their own lives or are potentially self-harming, which could be an indicator of intent to take one's own life, many people are not even known to mental health services, and it's so important that we are active partners and leaders within the counties of Norfolk and Suffolk and work together effectively and impactfully with partners such as public health teams within the local authorities, such as our emergency departments in the acute hospitals, primary care, but doing so as well with the voice of service users, carers and families at the heart. So a big focus and area of priority is the implementation of staying safe from suicide and being really active leaders within across our whole system with regard to suicide prevention. The development of the strategy has been done through a process of engagement, significant engagement, reaching out to within the organisation, colleagues, service users and carers. I came and spoke to the Council of Governors, along with partners across the system in our integrated care boards, public health teams and the regional public health team as well, who have all contributed significantly to what I think is a fantastic strategy and the platform for us going forward as an organisation of how we truly embrace the importance and the need for health equity to be fundamental to everything that we're doing across the organisation. I'm happy to stop there, Zoe, rather than keep talking, and happy to take any questions or comments.
It's really helpful, Kath, and thank you for all the work that's been done on this. We're being asked to approve this report, colleagues, or the strategy, apologies. But before we do, I just want to take a sense from board colleagues as to whether they're content with the situation we've got to, the position we've reached, or whether they have any questions. David.
Really welcome this, and you know it's long overdue really in terms of the role that the trust can play in the local communities in terms of health improvement with a health equity undertone. My question really is, my comment really is, it's just a word of caution. Because this is hard stuff. It's partnership working, it's deliverable outcomes through partnership working, not on our own. So I really welcome it, but all I would say is let's not set ourselves up to fail, because some of the measures of success are really tough and they're not just trust dependent. So it has to be an enabling strategy, really pleased, but let's just think about how we can make that progress jointly with others, but within our own organisation, really, whether or not our staff are really on board with this, because it's also beginning to be a bit of a different way of working. There's some new skills to learn. Partnership working isn't easy because it's often about compromise. So all I'm saying is let's just go softly, because this is a long-term strategy that will deliver long-term results. It's not a quick fix.
I think it's really well said, David. Thank you very much. Kath?
Thank you. I completely agree with you, David, and this is a 4-year strategy. What will sit underneath will be the delivery plans, which will break down what we're going to be doing, what we're going to achieve by when, and what the oversight and monitoring of that is. At the moment, there's palpable interest within the organisation, and we're having conversations with people. They're reaching out to me I've never had contact with, and also our leaders, our locality leaders are talking about this. It came through our quality performance group meetings where they're working at place and alliance level and starting to have these conversations. So there's a lot of enabling that we need to do within the organisation, but it does appear to be an appetite across the organisation for us to do this. As I say, there are people at all levels in the organisation that are reaching out saying, can I be a part of this? I'm interested. And through as well, I will be building a team, a small team, but a team within my structure, which is going to include a consultant in public health. So we're also bringing in expertise. This is their core job. The big part of that is about how we influence within our organisation, but influence across the system.
Thank you, Kath. Tom, and then Stuart.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I mean, David's right about the time it takes, and Kath too. I think, as well as the development of Kath's team, which is one of the big changes we're making in the corporate redesign, is developing that health equity function. We've obviously got the health equity large-scale change programme and the partnership working programme we talked about earlier, and they're key. I think the other thing is we have partners in the system. So in our provider collaborative, we've got other partners who are a bit further down the road to learn from too. So I think there's a really good opportunity, and it just fits with our 10-year plan, doesn't it? It fits with the 10-year plan and our neighbourhood working approach too.
Yeah, and it's great to see the Trust having the ambition to drive and lead this and to really shift the dial. So great. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks. Tom's picked up my point, to be honest, but I just suppose it's just looking wider as well. I think it's a fantastic piece of work, Kath. Very supportive. But are we looking to learn from others as well outside of our organisations with similar demographics, similar types of sort of rurality and demographics? Are we able to go and look at those organisations, and if they're further down the road, can we learn from them as well?
I completely agree. And it's about, this is the start. Having this strategy is absolutely at point zero, I would say, and it's about how we understand more about what's happening at our local level, but by learning from elsewhere that have done it better, have made mistakes, where there are real opportunities to see beyond our own vision and go elsewhere. Now, the development of the strategy, I had a look around the country in relation to it, but as I say, the strategy is the starting point. It's the so what and what next that comes from this, which is so critical.
Last comment from Jeremy.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, number one is around the outcomes for our patients and service users, and that is fantastic and really positive. The other thing that's just occurring to me is around how this is part of the fabric of our culture. As an organisation, staff and colleagues want to be proud of the care that we provide and the outcomes that we provide, and I think there's a side benefit here around that for our workforce, and as we promote this internally, staff should feel their part in that.
Yeah, I agree, and an element of this is how in the past the organisation has been quite inward-looking and insular, and our staff haven't felt confident or capable to look outside of our own organisation or even their own teams. And for me, this strategy is a platform for that neighbourhood working, for that working in partnership with other people, whether it's in the voluntary sector, whether it's other statutory partners, and having that confidence and ability to look outside, make a difference, which translates then into pride and all of the benefits that comes with that. So thank you, Jeremy, I completely agree.
Yeah, well done, Kath. I think this is a great strategy. Thank you for all the work that you and I don't know whether you've got a team yet, but whoever you have done in getting us to this stage. I think it's really important that we approve the strategy with thanks. I'm seeing nods around the table. I also think that there's so much else going on in the Trust. I want to make sure that we've got a means of ensuring that we're able to have the communication with our staff about the adoption of this really important strategy that we now want to deliver. So I'm sure you'll work with Rebecca on that, but thank you very much for that and for explaining it so clearly as well. In terms of freedom to speak up, I'm afraid Holly is struggling to get here because of transport difficulties. So, Kath, could I ask you to introduce the Freedom to Speak Up report, please?
Yes, of course, thank you. And Holly will be here, so if there are any questions afterwards, because I recognise the importance of hearing the board hearing from the Guardian themselves, albeit practicalities that made us struggle today. So the report sets out in the reporting period, which is from the beginning of June to the end of July, there were 75 cases escalated through the Guardian service, with the three key themes that are set out: leadership, communication, organisational change process, and culture and discrimination. The data is set out in the paper. I wasn't going to repeat what you can see. I thought there's some key points which would be useful to raise. In terms of the number of people speaking up, of that 75 instances of speaking up, a third of those were escalated anonymously, and I think this is an improvement from our position in the past, where the majority of speaking up was undertaken anonymously. Paul has helpfully already talked about the demographic data, and there's work to be done on that, and my reflection also is both whether it's a service user or a staff perspective, there's some difficulties in people, I think, approaching the question about how people identify, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's gender, or other demographical questions. So I think there's some cultural work we need to do to support people in asking that question, but also being really clear why that's so important. The report sets out in section 3.4 about the positive feedback, both yes, no's, but also qualitative feedback in relation to the experience of the Guardian, which I feel is really important from a board perspective, to remind people that the internal service has only been in place since March. So what's that, 7 months? So in terms of the experiences that our colleagues are feeding back on regarding the use of this service, to me represents confidence in the approach that we're taking. And in terms of transparency, Holly is working with our informatics team to develop a dashboard which will be accessible, obviously within the constraints of ensuring confidentiality, but being more open and transparent about feedback that is given following the use of people following the speaking up process. There is activities taking place proactively with regard to promoting the Speaking Up Week, which is taking place in October. So we have visibility. I think one of the really exciting visions that Caroline had when arriving and looking to transform our Speaking Up process relates to the use of Speaking Up champions, where they're across the whole organisation. Currently we have 52 Speaking Up champions, and at our Cascade meeting that took place this week or last week, we heard not just from Holly, but we heard from some of those Speaking Up Guardians sharing why the role is so important for them, for the teams that they work across, and how they feel it makes a difference now. It's helping in their own development. And there are plans to continue to expand that cohort, and already another 15 people have expressed interest in registering for the training to be a Speaking Up Guardian. And then finally, Dear Caroline, which is an alternative methodology. People don't have to escalate via Freedom to Speak Up. They can actually take the approach of Dear Caroline, which means that people can make contact, and that has the oversight of our Chief Executive. And you can see in section 5 about the number of cases from the same time period, beginning of June to end of July, where people have raised issues through Dear Caroline. Only 7 of the 25 were raised anonymously, and again, demonstrating a move towards more greater confidence in people feeling able to speak up. I'll stop there, and apologies, I'm not Holly, but she'll be here later if the board do want to speak to her.
Thanks very much indeed, Kath. Thank you for stepping in as well and presenting that. Caroline.
Thank you very much, really helpful. Two comments, please. One is it's really helpful to have the report, and I wonder if we could look at the themes through the lens of localities in the People and Culture Committee, so that there's a more detailed analysis of that. And I also wonder, Kath, if we could, in Gary's review that he's doing of localities, if he could have a review of the leadership themes that have come up since we went live with the localities, so that he can consider that in part of the review we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think that's a good plan to get some specificity in all of this, and it's good to know that this is very much looked at in depth in the People and Culture Committee. Any other thoughts or comments? There's one slightly small point, slightly negative apologies, because it's great to have this information in front of us. We spent quite a long time, I seem to remember, as non-executives asking that we had information that was freedom to speak up proportionate to the number of staff working in a locality, and I'm really delighted that that's there, and it's been there for some time. But we also push very hard to see trend data, and that seems to, I think, in the kind of the sort of the summarising down for board from the papers, I think that probably go to People and Culture, that we've lost that trend data, and I think that that's really important for us to see as a board. So could we reinstate that, please, Kath? Thank you very much. Any other thoughts or observations? No, thank you, Kath. Let's note the Freedom to Speak Up report, and then let's go on to the Health and Safety Annual Report, which, as I say, is a compliance report. Michael?
Yeah, this is for consent. It's been reviewed by the Quality Committee. It's the annual report that covers the period up to 24-25 and has an accompanying action plan based on its reflections.
Yeah, this is a really good example of where so much of the work that's done through board is done through board committee. It doesn't need to be repeated in board, so our members of the board happy to note this report. Thank you very much. We now come on to questions from the public. We haven't got any written questions that relate to matters on the agenda, but I note that we've got some people who have sat through our meeting and may want to ask us some questions, which will be welcomed. Michael?
Well, yeah, thank you, Chairman. I did appreciate...
the last one.
I might last you out on this one. No, yeah. Hello, yeah. I appreciated, Cass, your review of confidentiality, because I've seen in the past many problems. That was very informative. What I want to ask is, as a governor living in the West, first of all, how many directors have you coming from the West or the West locality? Just out of interest.
We have 3 directors based in the West locality. Is that what you mean?
Yes,
yes,
you do. That's
3.
That's good.
Yes.
Because what, as a former, NHS, etc., I've aligned myself with the West locality, but I would actually like to hear what's going on from time to time, and also maybe attend the odd meeting where I can be informed of what is happening in the West. Because I have to stand up for the West, because the West has always complained they're forgotten.
Thank you, Michael.
So that's really what I want to say. Is that possible to go to your meeting, locality meeting? Or?
So Michael, thank you for that. And what we're setting up, I think we've been talking, haven't we, as a Council of Governors, of ensuring that governors are aligned much more closely to localities. And that's been achieved, and you know you're clearly volunteering to be a governor that's aligned to the locality. We've already got in place where we have lead non-executive directors and lead executive board members who are aligned to the West locality, and the plan is for us to support governors in visits into their localities. So the answer is absolutely yes. There'll be a programme of supported visits focused into the localities, which we can explain the detail to you outside of here. And it absolutely is the case that we'd like to get our governors to get to know our kind of lead directors within the locality, and we'll do that in a kind of an organised way, so that you can then forge those links and think about visits within the sort of the areas that we have in your locality that will then help you kind of really forge that link even more firmly. So thank you for your question. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for attending. It's really good of you to have been here and have shown that interest. We come to the point on the agenda where we just have a couple of minutes to think about how we've conducted ourselves within the meeting. This is our values and reflections. Have we lived our own values in the way that we've engaged with one another? Have we allowed all voices to be heard? Have I acted as a chair that shuts people up too quickly? All feedback, as ever, is a gift, so any thoughts and reflections would be really helpful from colleagues on the board. Kath?
Thank you. I'd just like to acknowledge the level of kindness and compassion that was expressed towards Julie, our service user and carer, and I think as a board we were able to be agile around what we were able to ask and when. And I think that shows a level of sensitivity, but it didn't diminish the nature of the discussion that came from the experience that Debbie was able to share through the video. So I thought that was important.
Yeah, well done, Kat. Anything else, Rebecca?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just add to that, Julie was so appreciative of how seriously we took the points that she made and had clear actions associated with her service user story. And I think that's a really important message for us as a board. And I assured her that very often that is the case. We have direct actions as a result of those service user presentations, but she and the colleagues with her were really impressed to see that. So I think it's important we clearly document them on the log and keep track of them. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, quite right. And then, you know, from time to time think about how we bring those back as well, because for the last 3 service user experiences there have been a series of actions. Yeah, okay, great. Anyone else? No? I assume that means everyone's very happy with how the board's run today, which is good to know, but you do have an opportunity if you've got any thoughts or suggestions about how we can improve it. Jeremy?
From a learning and improvement perspective, Zoe, when you reminded us about the so what next, I think that's something that we can all reflect on for future meetings, to be more focused around the content of our discussions and our success. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I think it's really an evolving picture, isn't it? I think we're really conscious about that. It's all in our minds. You know, when this is part of, you know, we do board development. We want to become a high challenge, high support board together. We want people to look in from the window of the public that are watching and colleagues who are here, and you to see that. And I think it's work in progress, isn't it? But I do feel that the way that we're able to talk outside of our kind of, you know, guide rails, if you like, in terms of our respective roles is really, really promising and really positive. So well done, everyone. I'll go to David and then Rebecca.
Just a quick one. You said at the outset, take the papers as read, and I think whilst you said that before, people haven't always followed the script. So I think we're getting better at not trawling through a mammoth amount of paperwork and having a more focused discussion. So whilst it's work in progress, I think it's a lot better than it used to be.
I'm always really conscious when I do that, because actually I think the Chief Exec and Chair's report, we don't take it as read, but that's our opportunity to provide that kind of almost outward-looking, public-facing thing. So I wonder whether Caroline and I ought to almost think about whether it's sensible we present it in this way and just have a report, or whether actually we ought to have a quick PowerPoint or something. I don't know, but I always feel really guilty because I say take this as read, and I know I've got 7 minutes of talking to you, so I do feel bad about that. But I do think we are getting much better. But thank you for that. And someone else, Rebecca, did you want to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder if you might like to take an opportunity to comment on the fact that we'll be producing a blog now from your board meetings in public, so that's placed on the record. Or would you like me to comment for you?
Yes, Rebecca is reminding me that I'm completely on the ball and absolutely going to somehow or other be producing a blog as a result of today. But thank you very much indeed, Rebecca.
You might find that there's been some help with that.
And there's been some help with that apparently, and Rebecca's probably going to brief you far better.
But in all seriousness, I think it's an important development that we've discussed because we'll be sharing in Zoe's words, an output from the board, so everyone can see what we were discussing. But also importantly, we're going to be sharing Zoe and probably Caroline's Chief Exec and Chair's report, because there's just so much information in there that I just don't believe a lot of colleagues look at, and they don't go onto necessarily the website and have a look at. So it's really important for our governors and all the board to know that, do promote it, a new initiative for us.
Thank you very much for that, Rebecca. And Holly, I'm so sorry you had travel difficulties. Please don't worry at all. We know that you're the heart and soul behind the report that we received today, and that Kath was able to present. And we've got lots of thoughtful suggestions. So thank you again for everything that you do on freedom to speak up. No, please don't apologise. That's fine. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Well, it's only 13:02. We could carry on for another hour and a half if anyone fancies it. But other than that, we could. Oh, hang on, someone else wants to.
Just another reminder for all colleagues that waiting for you outside, you might want to eat beforehand, is your flu jab. So for those who would like it, we have a team waiting here to administer it, and a team of comms colleagues who will be taking your photograph to use in our promotional materials, because obviously it's a really important jab, as you've heard colleagues express throughout this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. I hope the injection is going to be in the arm. And with that happy thought, thank you very much. Date of next meeting is sometime in November.
I hope your lovely me and M dress rolls up.
I hope it does as well. I think it does. Just about
Don't stretch it, do you? My friend said to me, "Oh, go on Vinted, and you'll get me and M."
Oh, really?